It is a spectacle. It is a place like absolutely no other in the world. It is the corner of 16th Street and Georgetown. It's a 2.5 mile cathedral of speed with a nice long yard of bricks that makes one driver oh so happy after 500 miles of racing. Of course, where else could you be? As we say hello and welcome to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and welcome to the 2020 Open Wheels 500-mile race presented by Mitchell Transmissions. Last week, we had drivers fighting, clawing their way into our field of 33, and in just a few moments' time, we are about to go racing for 500 miles. 800 corners, the pit stops, the 7, the 8, the maybe the 9, who knows? And our race coverage today is presented by the Majors Garage. We'll have a look at our track conditions in just a moment's time. But first of all, I want to give a shout out to Islam Balal, TrackCams22.com for our track cameras, Tyler Maxson for our in-car cameras here today. Producer and commentator here today, Arjuna Kankapati, and alongside both of us, we've got a long-term veteran sitting alongside me in the virtual booth, as well as now being a part of IndyCar's flagman team, Aaron Likens. I'll talk to both of them in just a moment. Partially cloudy here today. Track temperature is 43 degrees Celsius, but that will go up as the day will carry on. Wind speed 3 kilometers an hour to the north right now. That means that the dreaded turn 1 gusts, well, they look as though they might be okay for the time being. Live timing and scoring is available all race long. Visit RaceSpot.wtf/Indy for that one. And let's get right to it, shall we? And run ourselves through our starting grid for this afternoon's race. And we start at the rear, row number 11. On the outside, the number 49 car of Daniel Johnson. In the middle, the 313 of Dylan Freckleton. And on the inside, the 21 car of Logan Simmons. Row number 10, Young O, former Indy 500 winner. On the outside, Chris Stouffer in the middle, and Austin Espartee will be on the inside of row number 10. Row number 9, we go up, and Oliver Silva then on the outside. Dakota Gisenzo in the middle, the 43 car, Simon Bryant in the number 22 on the inside of row 9. Up into row number 8, former iRacing Indy 500 winner Tim Doyle on the outside, Noel McBride in the middle, and the 007 of Henry Bennett on the inside of that row. Row number 7, Chris Cahill, Ludicrous Speed on the outside, Powerslide Motorsports, Andre Consider in the middle, Andreas Eek for Team Talent on the inside in the 76 car. Row number 6, it's AJ Burton on the outside, Matt Hollenborough in the middle, and look out for the 812, Marco Brazil. He's going to be charging through the field from the inside of row number 6. Onto row 5, Andrew Wood on the outside for Team Talent. Adam Crane for Satellite Racing in the middle, alongside his teammate Chad Simpson in the number 42 car on the inside. Row number 4, and you've got Jesper Orman on the outside for Three Crowns Racing, Liam Quinn for Team Talent in the 44 in the middle, Jason Brophy in the 88 car, also for Team Talent on the inside. Into our top 10 now, P9, Joshua Chin for Team Talent, P8, Adam Blocker for Powerslide Motorsports, and Matt Pavelski, a former iRacing Indy 500 winner. Well, he's on the inside of that row. Row number 2, Hugo Olsen, Brandon Lichtenberg, and Christian Challoner. This is the row where we think we might see our winner here today. Watch out for those 3 drivers as we go now to our top 3 drivers. And first of all, it's Christopher Demerit, a former iRacing Indy 500 champion, driving in the 144 car for Broken Arrow with i5G and Apex Racing Team. Wilson Nato in the middle for Interlagos Motorsports in that beautiful purple and black number 80 machine. And on pole position, Michele Constantini and the Apex Racing Team with i5G and Broken Arrow will be bringing the field to the green flag here today. Woof. And with that, let's say hello to the people who will be joining me on this magical 500-mile adventure. Aaron, I'm going to come to you first. Welcome back. You had a crazy old season, but it's great to once again be calling a 500-mile race with you.
Yes, being with you 6 months ago, I never would have thought I had a journey of this year as I did, but looking forward to this race. Strategy, as always, going to be paramount here today. It is going to be awesome to watch. It's hard to really pick a winner, Will. So many former winners, so many rookies in this that want to get a taste of being the first across that yard of bricks. It's going to be real interesting to see as you let off with 7, 8, 9 pit stops. What are we going to see? I think track position is going to be key, but there are several drivers in this field that have done some wacky strategy things in the past, so look forward to that.
We have a total of 12 former winners of either the Open Wheels 500-mile race or the iRacing Indianapolis 500. They're the ones racing in the race. However, Arjuna, at the front of the field, we have a 13th winner. He is the only two-time winner of the iRacing Indianapolis 500 feature race. That is Brandon Traino, and he is driving our Ceremonial Corvette pace car here today.
Yeah, we're about to get underway then here at the Open Wheels 500, and not the traditional, not the iRacing traditional 2-wide start wheel. Instead, the 3-wide start, and Brandon Traino in that Corvette C8R gonna lead us to the green flag once the iRacing pace car dives down onto the lane. We'll have a few additional pace laps where Traino will pace the field as we slowly increase the speed. And then on lap number 3, Traino dives down to the pit lane and hands over to his teammate Michele Costantini to take us to the green flag.
Yep, so it's going to be a good old game of counting backwards here today, which if anyone's got their bingo cards ready, then we hope that you have fun playing RaceSpot Bingo with us here today. But 9 countries represented in this open wheel 500-mile race, 11 first-time participants. There's a total of 16 teams represented and 1 independent. Team Talent have got the most cars in the field here today. But, Aaron, I would argue that the Apex Racing, stroke Broken Arrow, stroke i5G cars, after the performance they've had in the month of May in sim racing over the last 4 or 5 years, you cannot bet against them when you get to a big stage like this.
You, back in May, said look out for the Dynasty, and I think that's exactly where they are headed. Will they be able to pull it off? Potentially, although, as you mentioned, so many teams, so many countries, and when we get down to the final 1 lap, the teammates, team orders, working together goes out the window. So most of all today, if you are that dominant, that up front, you don't want to be that guy to take your teammate out, yet at the same time, nobody came here today thinking, you know, I am looking forward to just an average 5th place finish, going to help push my teammate. No, everybody here wants to win.
Well, the drivers are getting themselves ready to go. And, of course, just like in the month of May, or, of course, this year in the month of October, we have our own traditions as well. So let's hand it over to the playing of Back Home Again in Indiana.
Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming candlelight still burning bright through the sycamores for me. The new moon its fragrance through the fields I used to roam. When I dream about the moonlight on the Wabash, how I long for my Indiana home.
The ever dulcet tones there of Mr. Jim Neighbors with a performance of Back Home Again in Indiana. So we're going to be counting back here today. We're just about completing the first of 3 pacing laps behind our Ceremonial Corvette pace car driven by 2-time iRacing Indy 500 winner Brandon Traino. Traino couldn't participate in this race, Arjuna, because he was a little bit busy at a NASCAR event last weekend at Phoenix.
Yeah, a bit busy dealing with championship weekend at Phoenix, and Treno, a little disappointed, I know, after talking with him, Will, about missing this year's event, but he's glad to be out there at the front, at least pacing the field. He'll be jumping into the, the virtual booth, as it were, to help his teammates out right after his responsibilities end, and I'm hoping to see Treno and potentially get that I5G team, up to the point again. Constantini leading us off the green, it's going to be great, and I think I5G in a very strong position here with many of their drivers towards the front of the field.
I've got a couple of things circled on my little depth chart here, Aaron. The one that at the front of the field you need to pay attention to is Wilson Nato. He is in an I5G sandwich in the middle of that front row. You know they're probably going to time the start around him. He needs to be razor focused in the middle of that front row when the green flag flies.
Depending on how tightly bunched the field is, if he doesn't get a good start, it is very easy to get hung out to dry on that first lap. So I'm sure first and third have a plan of when they are going to punch off. So for our second place starter in NATO, if he mistimes that, second place could really turn into 6th, 7th, 8th, or further back on this first lap. So reflexes on the punch off is going to be absolutely vital for his race.
So we've got a lap and about a third left of pacing to go. Of course, the field will be building up speed. We're going to let them rip when they get towards about turn number 3. So about this time, next lap, we're going to see the cars starting to accelerate to full tilt. The reason for that, of course, well, A, it's tradition, but B, also, you really don't want to have 33 cars stacked 3 deep, all trying to go in towards turn number 1 at the reduced speeds if you were to let them go at the yard of bricks. So we are about a lap before we get to the green here. Let's get our predictions in. I'm going to start with you first, Arjuna.
Well, as a member of Powerslide Motorsports, I have to be slightly biased and try and at least pick one of their drivers. You know what? Hugo Olsen. He's been a new addition to the squad, Will. It's been great to see his integration with the team, starting on the outside of row number 2. I think it's going to be the year that Powerslide Motorsports wins one of these broadcasted 500s. I think Olsen's going to be the man to do it.
What about you here, Aaron?
Oh, always tough to be on the spot, but I'm looking further back in the field with Doyle and Young O. They have come up with some of the wackiest strategies that always seems to work. So if you want somebody deep in the field, they are winners, but you wouldn't really look at 28th or 31st starting spot as thinking a winner could come from there. But if you like a long shot, that's where you go. But final say, I got to say Demerit. He has been so solid as of late. I got to say, I like Christopher Demerit's odds here today.
Well, Young O, Tim Doyle, they won the 2012 and 2011 iRacing Indy 500s between the two of them. They are both used to coming through the field. It's been quite a while since we've seen Young O in competition. Tim Doyle is, of course, still a very active member of the iRacing IndyCar community, but there's 33 very different stories in the field here today, and they are almost set to go racing. Working down the back straightaway right now. Just want to say one more time, thank you very much to our presenting partner of today's race coverage, Majors Garage. And you are watching the 2020 Open Wheels 500-mile race presented by Mitchell Transmissions. Will Vincent, only third choice lead commentator, by the way, for today, alongside Arjuna Kankapati and Aaron Likings. Apparently, Aaron Bestwick and Rob Howden had something better to do here today. So, here we are, through turn number 3. The drivers will come and they'll begin to pick up the pace in just 1 moment's time. Inside line, of course, we are waiting for Michele Costantini to start putting that throttle down. We're still nice and steady as they work themselves now through turn number 4. Working through the apex of turn number 4, we are going to go RaceSpotTV fan immersion for the start of this race. As now, out of corner number 4, will come Michele Costantini to bring the field to the green flag in the 2020 Open Wheels 500-mile race. Good clean start. Everyone away. Wilson Nato looking down to the inside in towards turn number 1. Gets that one done. Nice and simply then over Costantini, moving Nato to the race lead. And I said this right at the start. In fact, we talked about it before we went on air, Arjuna. Nato needed to really get to the front of this field. However, Costantini's already looking back down to the inside in towards turn number 3. And Nato, because of all the i5G cars around him, is really got to make sure that he doesn't get hung out to dry.
Yeah, Nato started from that same middle of row number 1 last year, struggled a bit in the race, and right now Costantini, Demerit, Lichtenberg, and Pavelski all in the top 5 for i5G. So Nato down to the inside once again, trying to avoid getting stuck behind that i5G train of cars.
And the question is going to be how hard he's going to push, how hard he's going to defend the position, because now he's got a clearer run, but you see he's not moving down to the inside of the racetrack on the exit of turn 2. So he is more than happy to allow Costantini to go back past him, Aaron. So there's no defensive driving. I mean, yes, we've still got 198 laps to go in this race, but no defensive driving being taken on earlier on. Behind, however, the number 14 car, just checking in with him, looking very slow, actually, on the inside line out of corner number 4.
Yeah, bit slow, but going back up front right now, playing leapfrog, you're pretty much guaranteeing yourself first and second. It's way too early to be defending. Yet at the same time, if each straightaway you change the lead, that gives you a little bit of draft, and it's never too early to start talking about fuel mileage. Looking at about 30 laps, but if you can get a tow, 31, 32, maybe even 33 laps possible further back in the field, maybe even a little bit more. So up front, you're just loving the fact that you have that opportunity to stay up front and get a draft. It's a win-win.
Yeah, and for some of these drivers, of course, they are just wanting to get themselves into a rhythm. You are going to see some drivers maybe drop back a little bit, maybe just try and figure out how their car is handling in these conditions, because the drivers knew what the track temperatures to start the race were. They don't, of course, know how the track is going to evolve over the course of this event. So, front of the field, Costantini Nato still scrapping for position. Christopher Demerit and Brandon Lichtenberg right behind them, 3rd and 4th. Matt Pavelski currently rounds out your top 5. We have, however, got, well, about as far as the eye can see, most of your drivers kind of there or thereabouts in the lead back right now. So, there we are. Pass, stop, finish line. We've got a crash. We got our first caution of the day. No, we haven't, because it's on pit road. Car upside down. I think that's a number 16 car. I can just see a car. Yep, there's 76. Andreas Eek then just crashing on towards pit road, and Tim Doyle is involved in that incident as well. So the 2011 Irish Indy 500 winner, well, he's out of the race, and the yellow flag has flown, Arjuna.
Yeah, it was always going to happen. You can see Eek and Doyle getting together. We'll try and grab an onboard look maybe with Doyle, but it looks like Eek gets up into the wall there, Will, and Doyle just gets collected, trying to maybe avoid the incident as it unfolds in front of him.
Well, I have to ask you a serious question at this point, Aaron, because the iRacing flagman has been almost immortalized over the course of the whole COVID-19 lockdown situation, of course, with broadcasts across Fox and NBC Sports, etc. Who will win in the flagman battle, you or the iRacing flagman?
Oh, no choice. Definitely me. Although, you know, one thing about the iRacing flagman is whether it's 50 degrees or maximum, you get the same show every time. So for consistency's sake, Barney may have something on me, but if it were a complete flag off, yeah, I'm liking my chances.
Flag off. That'll be our Carb Day coverage next year for this event, Arjuna. Note it down. Let's get it going. But pit road will be open in a moment's time. Just having a look at the lights on pit road. They are showing red. Of course, we are very early into this event, only a couple of laps in. Now, it's time to mention the S word, strategy. For those drivers at the rear of the field, they will lose nothing right now by just coming in to put in about 6, 7, 8 laps worth of fuel. And there's a look at our race stats here today. The fuel window, 29 to 33 laps. And realistically, if you are in the back third of a field here, Arjuna, I would come in to top off I see no reason why you would want to worry. In fact, it looks like almost everyone's coming on towards pit road unless we're going to see some dummying. Nope. Oh, yes, we are. Yes, we are. Lots of dummying going on then. So it looked as though for a moment everyone's going to come in. Then absolutely no one in your top 20 has come on towards pit road so far. And then a few at the rear of the field. The rear third have come on towards pit road because realistically they have nothing to lose.
And they're all led by Marco Brazil in the 812. The rest of the drivers, Henry Bennett in the 007, Chris Cahill, Simon Bryant, Oliver Silva, Dakota DiCienzo, Logan Simmons, Dylan Freckleton, and Daniel Johnson. So like he was saying there, Will, a lot of the guys who are hanging around at the back of the pack, and they're going to go up on the jacks, get a fresh tank of fuel and one of their 10 sets of tires. We haven't really mentioned it, Will. There is a tire limit in effect for today's race, and that includes the tires that you start the race with. So only 9 sets available in the pit stops, and that's something that we hopefully won't have to deal with too much as we get to the end of the race.
Yeah, and it's worth noting as well that these drivers, of course, yes, they 29 to 33 laps is your normal fuel window. Don't forget they did have to do an additional 3 laps at reduced speed. And it's not your pace car reduced speed. It was a little bit faster than that. So this first stint, Aaron, if they were to have run it green, they would have maybe done 27, 28 laps. This will now, this caution, bring it back into that normal first stint window. And Juno a moment ago was talking about how Brandon Traynor is going to be helping to work the strategy numbers for the i5G team. There's a lot of people already. They have their calculators doing the famous countback. Where do I need to be now to put myself into good position later on?
Yeah, this was just, if this yellow came out, I'd say even just 3 laps later, we probably would have seen at least half the field pit. Lap 20 is about the point in time that if you want to make it in as few stops as possible, 20 is the same. So right now, realistically speaking, should we go green the rest of the way? I know, laugh at me, but should we go green the rest of the way, everybody still has the same amount of stops. So cars in the back, simply right now, advantage is going to be fresh rubber and maybe taking a little bit less fuel on their next stop. Which,
you say green rest of the race. We've done a number of iRacing Indy 500s where they've done over 120 laps green, over 4 pit stops. If this race starts getting a little bit spread out, if we get 1 green flag run, then what normally happens means we get 2, 3, 4 green flag runs.
It seems every time I join you in the booth, about lap 40 to 160 is green, and then it never fails that we get that yellow at about lap 164, 165, which then makes us really wonder what's going to happen on the fuel mileage, who has enough, who is saving. So that seems to be the trend. Hopefully we see that today, and the pace car has no chance at leading the most laps.
Yep, the pace car has got its lights turned off, so it'll be coming on towards pit road this time by, and Wilson Nato will be bringing the field back to green flag racing. Live timing and scoring is available all race long. Visit RaceSpot.wtf/Indy. Thank you to our partners at Timing 71 for supporting us with that. So, our top 8, very quickly. Wilson Nato leading the way in the number 80 car. Michele Constantini, second place. Christopher Demerit in third. Brandon Lichtenberg in fourth. Matt Pavelski in fifth. Adam Blocker, Hugo Olsen, and Josh Chin round out your top 8. The question's going to be right now, will Nato go early? Will Nato go late? Will cautions bring cautions? Well, we're going to find out in about 10 seconds time. Thanks for the RaceSpotTV sticker there, Wilson. Much appreciated. Your car now goes 0.2 of a second a lap faster. Pace car on towards pit road then. We are ready to go. And Nato now starts picking up the pressure. And green flag is back out in the air. We've got 192 laps worth of racing to go. 191 even. In towards turn 1. Nato gets the early jump, but don't worry, Cosentini et al. Will be right behind him by the time they get back down towards turn number 3. A little bit of 2-wide racing, that's Young on. And you just see there, going past the car, that's now McBride, battle for P number 21 on track there. Austin Esparti and Matt Olibar just ahead of him on the racing circuit right now. But again, a good clean start, Aaron, to get ourselves back to green flag racing.
Lane start, and once again up front, the game of leapfrog continues on. It's a shame we're only tracking lead changes at the line, because right now, take how many green flags we have, times it by 2. That's how many passes up front we've had, as once again NATO goes back to the point. Expect Costantini once again down the back straightaway to get that toe, peer to the inside, and we could have 200 laps of leapfrog, Will.
We very well could. And it will then come down to the other phases of the race: managing traffic, managing tyres, managing the in-car tools, managing pit entry, and managing pit exit. They're the 5 things, Arjuna. I always say, you get those 5 right, there's a good chance you'll get yourself a top 10 finish. You've got to get each of those 5 correct, because even one of them done incorrectly could really hurt you in a long race like this.
The dominoes have to fall in your favor, Will. I mean, like you say, it's not just one thing. It's so many minute details that have to go perfectly, and Costantini knows that. He won last year with a late race caution that flew and gave him the win. We'll see what happens this time around. We've already had 1 early caution, just 2 cautions in last year's race, and cars starting to make moves. Look at Adam Blocker down to the inside now, trying to get past some of the i5G teammates.
Yep, and Adam Blocker, number 74 car, has got himself Matt Pavelski just ahead of him, and then Hugo Olsen just behind. Olsen's kind of a little bit of an odd man out in some regards around here, but he runs right now in 7th place in that number 39 car, part of the Power Slide Motorsport stable right now, as they work themselves down the back straightaway once again. You can see Costantini just pulling out to the inside again as they head themselves down in towards turn number 3. A little bit further back, Marco Brazil. He's a driver who we've seen do a number of miraculous things over the years here, Arjuna, and he's a driver who we expect, given the opportunity, will really try and push his way to the front. However, he does prefer starting and running in clean air compared to running in traffic.
Very much so, and his fellow Brazilian NATO out front, that's where Brazil will want to get. You see a puff of smoke. Hopefully there's no cautions out in front. Looks like we're clear right now, but Brazil, the first car, Will, that came down the pit lane to take tires, and so he's trying to make his way through the field. Only up 1 position as things stand, and now 1 second behind McBride in front of them. A bit of work for these train of cars to do.
Indeed so. As 22nd place then for Brazil. He was, again, one of the first driver to come on towards pit road. Brazil did start this race here today a little bit further back than he would have wanted to have done, actually, starting in 16th place. So he has lost 6 places already here, but again, it's a long race. The fastest lap graphic that you see on your screen as well, Aaron, it's not that important right now, because basically if you are inside the draft, then you're going to have a fast lap. If you catch someone, then all of a sudden your lap time will grow by 4 or 5 tenths of a second, and you might end up being the driver on screen as well.
I'd be shocked if anybody in the top 3 has a chance at fast lap unless we get to lap traffic, because the toe is everything here. It's obvious. Just look at the run that second place gets on the leader. Imagine if you're 24th, you come around turn 4, you got a second to 23 cars. That is going to be an absolute massive amount of air that's being pushed for you. So if our fastest lap comes from the front 2, I will be shocked.
I completely agree. Unless someone's got an absolutely magical setup that they can work in clean air, which I really doubt will be the case. Again, you see that even though we've got different teams inside your top 10, each with different setup strategies between teams and even drivers. There is no one magical setup that works at this racetrack. I remember when I used to be racing a lot more frequently, Arjuna, you would have a setup, but if you got a driver who liked to slightly lose the setup, where the back end of your car would just tilt a little bit more, then you can't run a tight setup. It's just not in your nature to do so. So there is no one magical team setup that works at a track like this compared to, say, a track like Texas.
I think what you find, though, Will, is that there's so much setup development that goes into these races, especially here at the Brickyard, that a lot of teams will focus on a few areas of development. I'm not going to reveal any secrets that some of the teams have told me. That will get me in trouble, Will. You know that better than anyone. But there's areas of focus that you investigate and you try and see how various changes impact the car. And you go off from there, and from there, like you say, each driver does have the ability to go and tailor that setup. But talking about the driver input right now, we haven't really talked about it, Will. All drivers have the in-car tools available to them to adjust as well, the weight jacker and the ARB. And right now what we're seeing is, unless you're really in the front of the queue, you're not really able to make anything work. It's fairly single file. You have to go all the way back to 10th place before Jason Brophy just tried to make a move there.
Yeah, as we see now at Bride, by the way, side by side with Henry Bennett. Henry Bennett just got himself past on the run towards the yard of bricks there. And you're right, more importantly, however, Aaron, if you are running in a pack of traffic, then all of a sudden you get yourself to the front of the pack and you're running in clean air, you need to remember to at least partially reset those tools, because otherwise, the next time you come in towards turn number 3, you're going to have a very, very loose race car.
And we have seen races lost up front when a driver that's been mid-pack all race gets up front. They go into turn 1 for the first time as a leader, and the car swaps ends. We are seeing a little bit of a stringing out effect right now. We saw this back in May. We did talk about the draft and how important it is. However, when you are in that big draft, you're having to put in more, just a little bit more wheel input to, well, down the straightaway. That draft is your friend. In the corner, not so much. You don't have as much air on the wings, so the tires have to work more. So as the run progresses, you're going to see fall off. People in the mid-pack that are having to push their tires aren't going to be able to make the runs, may fall back, may lose the draft. So our front 2 right now are going to be the only 2 cars that have any chance at having really decent tires through this entire run.
You're right. And also one other thing to note is that the difference in this year's race and last year's race, of course, is the aero shield, which has been introduced, of course, for the 2020 season onto the Entity Data IndyCar Series cars, and of course then also onto our cars here on iRacing. And that does impact a little bit on the aerodynamics and also the kind of tyre wear as well. So we have seen in May, we did see in the Indianapolis 500 Europe, the cars are not as easy mid to late into a run. It's not as easy to just pull alongside and pass compared to how it was last year, for example.
And it seems to accentuate that effect of the dirty air, and that's something that as we now work deeper into this run, Will, that drivers are going to be dealing with more and more. You see NATO starting to lose track of the leaders, Demerit now, and Costantini doing a bit of swap drafting, trying to pull away in the i5G teams. But we should also point out, Will, that iRacing month of May, that was the first ever 500-mile race run with the aero screen. Didn't get to debut out on track. Instead, we had it in the virtual iRacing service.
Yeah, Adam Crane, by the way, just lost a position to Jesper Orman. Henry Bennett, I thought he'd just come off pit road, but he hasn't. My timing and scoring screen just being a little bit silly there. But he's batting it out of Chris Sofa right now. And this is in the battle for 16th place on track. Henry Bennett in the 007 Powerslide Motorsports car. And he is currently the best driver on new tyres. So he's able to get past Marco Brazil. And then 2, 4, 6 places now ahead of Marco Brazil, who of course was the driver leading of those who came in for tyres. So we talked about Brazil struggling for tyres and working in that dirty air quite often, Aaron. Well, Henry Bennett, complete opposite story right now.
And this is something to take note later should we have another split strategy. How far forward do those new tires get? What is it worth? Is it worth a risk of 5-10 positions? Bennett right now showing that it very well may be. I don't know if I'd want to give up a top 5 position, but if we get a yellow mid last run, could be interesting. Bennett may be thinking about 15th place here and not going for it.
Yeah, and just a reminder, as Arjuna said earlier on, there is a limit of 10 sets, so 40 tyres is all you get for this race. 10 sets of the virtual Firestone Firehawks. However, the longer we go with a green flag run, the less that's going to become a factor, because normally we're looking at 6 or 7 pit stops normally to complete this race if it was under green flag conditions. So as it stands right now, that shouldn't be an issue. Wilson Nato's falling down into 3rd place. So after leading and jostling for the lead. Michele Constantini and Christopher Demerit, well, they've pulled out now 0.7 of a second over the Interlagos Motorsports number 80 car. And now you're at that point here, Aaron, where NATO's getting close to losing the draft to the front two.
Have to wonder if we talked about tire fall off from when we started. The track now about 10 degrees hotter than we began, so that may not sound like much, but is his handling going away? If it is, then that could be a very frustrating race to have been part of that lead battle, and now to see the front two just march inch by inch away from you can be highly frustrating. Got to stay really focused right now. Very easy, as we saw in May. Mid-run, turn 2, exit of 2 becomes very treacherous with this aero screen, so don't want to lose the rear if you are experiencing tire fall off.
Oh, trouble!
And we got yelled, big incident off of 4.
Yeah, second incident today off of corner number 4. At least 2 cars involved. Young O looks as though he's tangled with one of the cars in the mix there as well. And that includes Henry Bennett, who we were talking so highly about just a couple of moments ago. Chad Simpson there in the mix as well. So Henry Bennett, we're talking about how he's doing so well moving through the field after he had himself that pit stop early. And Chad Simpson was just ahead of Bennett out of corner number 4. Does he just get into the dirty stuff? No, they make contact on the exit of 4. Wicked incident there. Chad Simpson and Henry Bennett. Well, that is sad, but interestingly, 31 laps into this event, that was absolutely perfect timing for some of those drivers out front there, Arjuna.
Yeah, it really is, but take a look at the onboard here. Just, it's a hard one to call. We'll try and get another look at that one, Will. That looks, it just looks like Simpson struggling for grip. Bennett on those new tires trying to push it around the outside, and, well, unfortunately, we've already matched our 2 cautions from last year. Yeah,
only 2 cautions last year. We're probably going to have a few more this year, but yeah, I want to have another look if we can from up above at some point, because it does look like one of those 50-50 moves, and I was wondering for a moment whether Bennett just got himself into the grey on the exit of turn number 4. And here's a look at the super slow-mo then. So running through turn 4, you can see Simpson's all the way down on the inside. He moves up the racetrack. Bennett's on the outside, but then moves down a little bit on the racetrack. So you could call it a racing incident, but I think that Bennett, he had enough room to just stay running that outside, unless his car was getting particularly loose that arrow, which at that stage of the corner, your car is going straight and narrow. Bennett shouldn't have had the need to try and move down the racetrack.
I think you're right, 50-50, and also Bennett's passes as he was coming through the field was on the outside. So for drivers that are accustomed to being passed on the inside, having a car have that type of run on the outside can catch you off guard. So maybe one of the downside to tires is you may be passing drivers where they aren't used to being passed, and the 2 trajectories meet at exit.
Replay on board, Young O. The Ludicrous Speed cars. Not been a good day for Ludicrous Speed. And that's going to be the second of their cars now with damage after Tim Doyle was involved in the first of our cautions here today. Now it looks as though the only driver they got left running in the field is Chris Cahill for Ludicrous Speed. Out of pit road then. Well, it was pretty much as they came in for your top 3. Costantini gets the win out of pit road. Christopher Demerit, second place. Wilson Nato in third. Now McBride and Brendan Lichtenberg. Why did Niall McBride not pit there? There's absolutely no reason why Niall McBride shouldn't have pitted, because they're at the end of a fuel run. But Niall McBride's running in 4th. Lichtenberg's in 5th. Then Olsen, Pavelski, Blocker, Chin, Kinsella. Any idea there, Arjuna?
I have a suspicion that McBride has missed his pit box. Let's try and take a look at the replay here and see if we can spot that, but not sure exactly how McBride managed to miss his box there.
Yep, so here is...
Yep,
he just didn't turn in. Yeah.
Just missed his box. You can see on the right-hand side of the picture, he just misses the box. Let's see if we can get an onboard look at this one, Will.
Yep, so let's have a look then. Here we are, on board Niall McBride. And, of course, pit road's a very busy place. You do have your number And there you can see the 41. There's the Epic Pen on the left-hand side of the screen. And coming in, it looks like he's going to make the turn, but it would have been far too late at this stage. He would never have made it into his box. So he makes a turn, realizes he's messed up, and he's going to come on towards pit road now. So yeah, he is going to come on towards pit road now, and that's going to drop him all the way down to 29th place on track, because there are still 29 cars in the lead lap here, Aaron.
And you make that mistake. Sometimes you get credit for a lap led then, but he doesn't even get that here today. So no silver lining for this mistake. Will that one lap of fuel that he got mean anything? I don't think so. So going to be a long charge through the field for McBride here.
Indeed. He has done some incredible work at the Speedway before, however. So just an update, Young O, we did see him having a little bit of an incident at the back end of that incident, but he has put a new front wing on that car, and he has come back out on track. So the damage, if he had any, must have been very light. They've allowed him back out onto track. He's running in 18th place right now. That's an interesting one there, Arjun, because I thought that was a moderately hard whack.
Well, I'm a bit surprised that the stop was only 8.2 seconds. Even with a front wing repair, you'd expect that stop to be slightly longer. So interesting strategy there, but we'll see what happens now. Well, already 2 cautions, and it's already looking like all of the racers are a bit more feisty than they were this time last year. The impact of the aero screen and the additional dirty air that they're all dealing with seems to be a big factor here.
So let's have a look at the pace car, shall we? Are the lights out on it just yet? The answer to that question is no. So we have got at least a lap's worth of pacing to go here. Oh, actually, no. Am I completely wrong? The lights do seem to be out on the pace car. So excuse me on that one. The pace car is going to come on towards pit road as it does so right now. We're ready to go back to green flag racing. Costantini, front of the field. Christopher DeMerit second. Wilson Naso third. Green flag back in the air. A little bit of side-by-side outside of your top 15. Apart from that, everyone single file very early on. Christopher DeMerit already trying to attack. Look at that. NATO's going to try and go alongside Michele Costantini as well, and he does so. Look at that. NATO now trying to go down to the inside on turn number 4. That's the sort of thing that you're testing out right now, Arjuna. Lap number 198, just in case.
Crucial things right now happening. Olsen down to the inside, 3 wide into turn number 1. The Swede is going to try and take the lead here. All of these guys know, well, that caution is an opportunity to get to the front of the field, and Olsen has gone from 5th up to 1st.
Incredible move there by the number 39 Power Slide Motorsports car. And now, after it being I5G for so long in this race, it is now a battle between the Interlagos Motorsports car and the Power Slide Motorsports car. Wilson NATO, Hugo Olsen even, the 80 and the 39, doing battle at the front of your field. This isn't necessarily a bad thing for I5G because they can now start thinking about fuel saving if they want to, Aaron.
Yeah, we're just outside the range. 30 laps when you're running full tilt is about the run. I think for NATO and Olsen, they know they only have about 10, 15 laps of really usable tires compared to I5G. So take the lead now, give them the dirty air, hope they get tire fall off. So the Merritt and Costantini, I don't think they really want to be 3rd and 4th. I think they liked when they were starting to inch away from the field.
Indeed. Just to give you an update, by the way, Young, you mentioned that sideboard damage, Arjuna. He's lost 4 places already on this restart. So sideboard damage, you can carry on running, but it's going to cost you 5-6 miles an hour easily.
And it's not the type of damage that you can get repaired either. So Youngo going to be struggling around the rear for the rest of this race, and that's going to be along 167 laps for him. But look at this, Will. We've got all sorts of teams trying to get to the front now. Power Slide duo of Adam Blocker and Kinsella at the back trying to make up some move, and Joshua Chin has made some ground as well, now up into the top 10.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye out on Christian Challoner right now, number 78 car, because, of course, he's the driver who runs in the Coca-Cola iRacing NASCAR series in that number 78 car, but also he's a driver who I've longed to see really turn in a big performance at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I would love to see him running in the month of May. He's currently in P number 11, P number 12, P number 11. Our timing screens are saying two different things right now, but he's got Jason Brophy just ahead of him on track in that Team Talent car, and he's got Liam Quinn just behind, running in P12. Just ahead, by the way, Adam Blocker, Brandon Lichtenberg, side by side. That's a battle going on for P7, P8 on track. That's a Power Slide Motorsports i5G battle going on for P7, Aaron. Oh, Arjuna, go ahead. You wanted to say something there.
Yeah, I'll quickly get to my point. Blocker, by the way, has fallen behind his teammate Kinsella, so Blocker's starting to struggle with the dirty air, but Christian Challoner has recently joined up with the iRacing team as a staff member, Will. This might be one of the last competitive outings we see from Challoner, and already rumors circulating, rather, about his future in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola series, so let's see what Challoner is able to do here.
Or he creates an iRacing staff team with Tyler Hudson, and before you know it, they dominate the next year's iRacing Indy 500 and everything else that goes on.
I think Tyler Hudson likes the sound of that one, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Wilson Nato still leading the way here. We have completed a total, by the way, of 36 laps in this race. You might be wondering why it's just showing 164 laps to go. That's just because of the way the timing software works. We can't do anything else about that one. Sorry when we do magical things like these free wide starts. Just a quick point, by the way, in terms of the competitiveness of this field, 0.73 miles per hour or 0.496 of a second, that is the gap between first and 33rd in this race in terms of qualifying, Aaron. So this is a very, very tight field. Not quite as tight as what you would normally see in the month of May in the iRacing Indy 500. However, the difference is, in May, you can go and qualify 200 times if you want to. You couldn't do that last weekend.
And that the way this race is ran, trying to make it as authentic as possible. And for drivers on the bubble last week, oh, the heartache to just miss out on this race. Sitting on the bubble all day long, not an experience I want whatsoever. So you will see a little bit more variance because, as mentioned, back in May, you can qualify hundreds of times almost. So big difference there, and that adds pressure on qualifying to where it truly is the 4 most intense laps a driver can have.
Yeah, I've got stories of certain people who I'll keep nameless running home from a meetup that normally goes on the Thursday before the Indy 500 to go and qualify, 10 minutes, qualify, do their 4 laps, then come back to where we were for our social meeting. And they were doing that every hour. That's how much it meant to them. But the pressures of qualifying, of course, I ran one of these 500-mile races for about 5 years, Arjuna. I know how hard it is to manage. And, of course, we've got to say a big thank you to the entire Open Wheels team for all their commitment over the past few months, but also how nerve-wracking it is for the drivers knowing that A, you've got to delete your time to go back out on track, but then everyone else is watching you and you alone.
Yeah, it's a very different environment to the month of May, and a lot of these competitors have talked about bringing this type of a qualification format to the month of May, and the official iRacing Indy 500, but Tanner Watkins has put in so much hard work over the last few months, and it's been met by an increase in effort being put in by the teams as well, and this really is one of the most competitive Indy 500 fields that we've ever had here on the iRacing service, Will. It's great to see so many past winners out there on track, and, well, they all want to get one more win.
Yeah, as a reminder, 12 former winners of either this race, the Open Wheels 500-mile race, or the iRacing Indianapolis 500. Those of you just joining us, our ceremonial pace car today was driven by Brandon Trano, who in the month of May became the first ever 2-time winner of the iRacing Indy 500 top split. And that's an accomplishment that was 11 years in the making. On board a Christopher right now in the Power Slide Motorsports car. He's got Liam Quinn just ahead of him on track right now, and the Team Talent number 44 car. I tell you one thing here, Arjuna. I'm still getting used to these new camera angles with the whole aero shield, making it slightly different than how we have to look out of these cars.
Yeah, it is definitely a very different thing, and thank you to our own Tyler Maxson for putting these cameras together after just getting back from Sebring last night. He was competing in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge, but on board with Stouffer, and Stouffer started all the way back in 29th position. He'd been having technical issues, Will, all the way through qualifying weekend, and well, he got a special FedEx delivery on Sunday afternoon in the form of a new wheel and pedal set, propelled him into the field of 33, and Stouffer now making his way towards the front.
I know there's a FedEx Ultra Critical because they once took a Washington State flag to college game day overnight when it got the one they normally use got misplaced. So props there to FedEx. Other delivery companies are, of course, available. But in terms of retirees in this race, Young O has brought that car towards pit road. So it's 2 of the 3 Ludicrous Speed cars out of the race early on here today. And I'm sure that the entire Ludicrous gang are going to be very disappointed with that one. Young O is technically still in the race, but he's been on pit road now for close to 6 minutes. Chad Simpson is out. Henry Bennett is out of the race. Tim Doyle and Andreas Eek are also out of the race. So that is our drivers who are unfortunately no longer participating. That leaves us with a total of 28 cars in the race right now, of which 27 are on the lead lap. And in terms of who's moving, who's shaking, well, you've got to give credit to Hugo Olsen. He is up 5 places so far here today. But then also Andrew Kinsella here, Aaron, in P number 6 right now, in that number 4 car for Powerslide Motorsports. He is up a total of 15 places right now.
And that's not on strategy, that is by pure racecraft. So Kinsella having an absolute solid run, just on the cusp of maybe losing the front 4. We'll see if Pavelski can hang on to the draft. If he does, Kinsella will. But halfway through this tire stint, this is where fuel stint rather. This is where we're going to see the stringing out. So Kinsella hoping to hang on to that draft, because you can lose about 3-4 seconds here between the midpoint and when you have to come into the pits. And then if you come out and you get 2 teammates up front, it can be very hard to reel them back in.
Yeah, I also noted Chris Stouffer there. He started on the outside of row number 10. He's up 16 places. Austin Espartee, I've seen so much good from Espartee at this racetrack over the years. He is a sleeper. He could well do a lot more in the remaining 3/4 of this race. And then, of course, on the next page, you get to those people who, unfortunately, haven't done so well in this race here today. Hugo Olsen, Wilson Nato, still passing for the lead. And it does seem to be right now, Aaron, that Michele Cosentini and Christopher DeMeritt, they are happy and content to sit and ride.
No, nobody's going to keep track of who leads lap 45, 50. Stay in the race. They're in a great spot. We have seen you can go 5th to 1st in the final 10 laps. So all you have to do is be there. Don't risk your equipment. Don't risk a move. Big mantra these drivers need to keep in their mind is just because you can doesn't mean you should. We're at that point right now. Don't dive it in there. We've seen already some really competitive drivers taken out by moves on, if there would have just been a little bit of give, they'd still be in this race. So DeMeritt, Costantini, nothing to be worried about right now. No reason to try to get in the Nato-Olsen leapfrog, and maybe they can save that 1 lap of fuel that will give them something in the bank later on.
Don't say no one. Editor-in-Chief of OpenWheels.com, Tanner Watkins, he did a great guide last year, which is basically every statistic you ever wanted to know about every driver ever who's participated at the iRacing Indianapolis 500. So someone is at least paying attention to it. But yeah, the big picture, the lap that everyone remembers is lap number 200. There are no prizes at halftime. There are no prizes with 20 laps to go. It is whoever crosses this line with 200 racing laps scored complete who will get themselves, of course, the joy of victory. And, of course, Arjuna, having a look through this field, I'd say there's at least 11, 12 drivers, name drivers, who are thinking, you know what, I've still got a good chance. And at this stage, it doesn't matter even if you're half a lap back, because if the race goes green, you might have some gap, you might have some traffic, you might have the opportunity to start building on your race car. Running in the pack doesn't always teach you enough to be good at the end. If this race goes green, you want to understand how your car is handling when you've got to do 20 laps by yourself within a tenth of a second of your delta.
And you talk about some of the names in the field that still have a chance. All the way in 16th, we just mentioned Austin Espetit driving the Tanner-faced Chevrolet for Team Talent. Well, someone else, you talk about that, we only remember who's going to cross the line in front come lap 200. But Will, think back to this past month of May. Tanner Watkins himself competing in the official iRacing Indy 500. You were on the broadcast for that one. Tanner Watkins leading the field back to green for a one-lap shootout. I don't think anyone remembers that Tanner did that, and because ultimately it was Traino that took home the win, becoming the first two-time champion. But Watkins himself with a great pedigree here in racing, and like you say, anyone in this field with potential for more cautions to come out and more strategy to be played could be out front come the end of the race.
So we've had the Craig setup shop car over the years. We've now got the Tanner Watkins face car. We need a Hugo Louise face car at some point. Someone needs to design a RaceSpotTV Hugo Louise face car, and we need to get that running in a big event at some point in the future. Daytona 24/8 next year, because the delivery is always the best for that one. We need to have a Hugo Louise face car for that one. It is my mission moving forward to make that happen. This is the reason why I'm the third string commentator for this race, by the way. Just in terms of our battles going on track, Josh Chin is a driver here, Aaron, where he either has all the luck in the world or absolutely no luck at all. He is running in P number 10 in that Team Chimera with Team Talent car. He's got AJ Burton in the i5G Stroke Apex Racing and Broken Arrow car just ahead. And I'm glad that we're not running at Richmond, because by the time I say their team names, at least 2 laps will have been scored complete.
Oh, that is the truth. Chin, you're right. Going back 7 years, we have seen so much just, you're right, luck. He either has it all or none, and so often he gets caught up in incidents that had none of his making. If you want a driver that can point race and bring home the absolute best finish in a car that might be 10th, he can give you 7th, 6th, maybe even 5th. Of course, here today, you don't want 10th, 5th. You want the win. Chin, though, 10th place, right now 4/10ths off. One point I do want to make, we mentioned tire fall off. I've been looking at the apex of turn 1 speeds. The difference right now between the front of the field and the back third is almost 10 miles an hour in turn 1. So when we talk about tire fall off and setup, it was hard to get into this race. So for teams that didn't focus on the race setup, they may have a little bit more tire fall off, and that is why we are seeing such a stringing out of the field right now.
Yeah, and that's also going to make things a lot more interesting when we get to some lap traffic down the line, because 10 miles an hour, you can be 5-6 car lengths back heading in towards turn number 1 and be right on the rear through the short chute into turn 2. We go on board with McKenna Constantini running in 3rd place, and very quickly, I do love the livery on that number 93 car of Joshua Chin. He always has good liveries. This year he's got the same you see on the top of the Open Wheels logo, a kind of picturesque look at Indianapolis. Of course, Monument Circle is the centerpiece of that city. Happy belated Veterans Day to all those who served, who celebrated Veterans Day yesterday in America. McKenna Constantini, though, we've been riding on board with him for about half a lap right now. Steering input here. Oh, Juno, this is the one thing that until you've actually turned, about 1,000 laps at this racetrack, you don't always learn that much. The less you turn the wheel, the better the car is going to handle.
And it's not just that, it's about timing the turn and getting the initial entry just right as you balance the weight transfer. It's something, Will, that as someone who's got a lot of experience on the endurance side of things, I got thrown in to iRacing IndyCar this past May, and I had to learn all of these things. And, well, the first thing you'd learn behind two cars like Costantini is suffering right now is that dirty air makes it that much tougher to get the car down onto the apex of the corner. And, well, Costantini right now has a car that looks very, very settled as NATO down onto the pit lane.
Yep, that's interesting then. So 27 laps he did on his stint, but NATO's thinking track position here. Or maybe he's just counting back early. Maybe he thinks that he can pit now, get into some clean air, and he'll be good to go if the race goes green to the end. Of course, the last thing NATO's going to want is a caution in about a lap or two's time. But here he comes then, on towards pit road. Let's have a look, see how long he'll be stood in his pit garage. And it will be a total of 9.6 out and away then for Wilson NATO in the Interlagos Motorsport number 80 car. And we talk about those 5 phases of the race. I talked about the tyre management, fuel management, the in-car tools, pit in, pit out. Pit out is the one that catches out so many rookie drivers here, Arjuna, because of that horrible bump as soon as you basically try to shift up to second gear on the exit of pit road.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just that exit of pit road, Will. Entry to pit road as you try and lose as little time as you can under green flag stops. You're trying to time that braking point so you can slow down as late as possible, hit the limiter at that last possible minute. Joshua Chin, we were just talking about him. Well, 1 week ago, Will, he got it very wrong in the CIS 500. Hopefully Chin will be able to get a little better this time around.
Yes, and he comes out, by the way, Wilson NATO, in 27th place on track, just seeing like Hugo Ulsson is right now. So Wilson NATO is still on the lead lap. That's very important here, Aaron, because if you're on the lead lap and a caution comes out now, actually, NATO would kind of circulate himself back to the front of the field.
As long as you're within one corner of the leader, you shouldn't be able to maintain the lead lap. That's about the window. If you're within that one corner, you can maintain the lead lap. Also important for NATO right now is he has a big enough gap as our leader comes into the pits.
Yeah, Olsen's on towards pit road. Dylan Freckleton, we just saw making a pit stop there as well. So the Powerslide Motorsports number 39 car of Hugo Olsen on towards pit road. From the race lead, that will move Michele Constantini and Christopher Demerit back to the front of your field. I will argue 31 laps, this is kind of right on the money right now for these drivers. So I'm just keeping an eye out on Olsen, see where he's doing in terms of his pit time, and up to 7, up to 8, up to 9. Longest stop there, 10.6 seconds for Hugo Olsen as he will circulate back onto track. So it should be easily there. Wilson NATO retaking the lead of that 2-car battle. We're on board right now with Wilson NATO as he works through the short chute. You cannot come back onto the racetrack until you have exited turn number 2 at the blend line. Of course, NATO should just go streaming past. He's doing about 15 miles an hour more. And indeed, there we are. Hugo Olsen falling behind NATO, but not as bad as I thought it could have been for a moment there, Arjuna, having had a look at the pit stop times.
Yeah, he's just tucked right back into line right now, and this is perfect. These two guys will going to build up speed. They're going to start swap drafting, and this is going to influence the strategy for the two out front. Take a look there. They're not too far behind the two i5G drivers. However, those worn tires, they're not getting that same slingshot draft like those other two cars are now. Pit strategy, very interesting at this phase of the race.
Constantini, Demerit, Blocker, Kinsella, Lichtenberg, Brophy, Challoner, Quinn, Wood right now are your top 9, but pit road is becoming a busier place and will become a very busy place in about the next 30 seconds time. You do not need to use the short chute through turns 3 and 4 when making a green flag pit stop. You can, as we call it, pit off corner number 4, just like what they do in the Indy 500. And now we see Costantini on towards pit road, puff of smoke as he gets down to the 55 mile an hour speed limit. We can see almost everyone else around him coming on towards pit road, except for Christopher Demerit and Adam Blocker there, Aaron. So those two able to save a lap of fuel.
Yeah, saving quite a bit of fuel in my opinion. And will that play in later? Right now, if we do 30-lap stints, our final stop will be around 183, 186. So in 4 stops to say 14 laps, gonna be a challenge. But if they can take over the run of that a second, 1.5 seconds less fuel, that can be huge. That's one thing. If you aren't used to IndyCar racing, that 1 second in the pits is a football field on the track. So if they can save 2-3 seconds over the course of the race by going 1 lap longer, that makes a shorter final stop.
Okay, Scott Goodyear. Interesting to note, though, Costantini comes out almost a second ahead of Hugo Olsen and Wilson Nato. So the in-lap, the phase of the race where you really make your money, the pit in, the pit stop, the pit out, Costantini, we could see that puff of smoke there, Arjuna. He was heavy on towards pit road. He's not going to throw caution to the wind. He is going flat out. And as a consequence of that, well, he did have a second advantage. That's come down now to about a third of a second.
Yeah, Olsen lost almost 1.5 seconds compared to everyone else on the pit stop, so you can see everyone else being more aggressive, and that's what I was mentioning just a few laps ago. But now the top 4 as they run, Costantini, Olsen, Demerit, and Nato. Nato losing out a little bit there, Will, and he's also now got the most worn tires as we work deeper into the stint, and he's already shown the car is not necessarily handling the best in dirty air. Olsen looks to the inside trying to get to the clean air. I think Nato is going to start struggling now.
And Nato is going to be swallowed up. I think you're right. Because of the fact that he was falling back already anyway, Nato is really going to start struggling. Not necessarily as much now, but if he can't maintain a second to these top 3 drivers, he's going to start falling into the path of Adam Blocker, and we're going to have a 3 horse race for the moment at the front of your field. There's a look then at your top 8, bottom of your screen. Michele Costantini is leading by 1.5 tenths of a second over Hugo Olsen. Christopher Demerit in 3rd place. That's going to switch around as Olsen goes to the race lead. Wilson Nato 4th place, but he's almost now a second back from your race leader. Adam Blocker in 5th place. Matt Pavelski in 6th. AJ Burton in 7th place, and Andrew Kinsella will round out that top 8 as that's got to be a lap down car. Surely that was just moving out the way. Matt Holliburton there in the 0-2 All-American Racers car just moving out the way. Again, blue flag rules, they are generally informational, but at a track like this, Arjuna, if you can just let out of the noisy pedal down the back straightaway in particular, it just makes everyone's life so much easier into turn 3.
You're really not going to make many friends here, Will, if you are a lap down car and you're making life overly difficult. Yes, there is a balance to be struck, of course, when you're maybe just fighting to stay on the lead lap and not wanting to go down, an additional lap. But once you're 1 lap down, there's no reason to make life difficult for those lead lap cars. There's just no reason, and I'm sure if the foot was on the other shoe, the favor would want to be returned, and that's what I think we're going to see later on in the race.
And you know what? I've always had it. I was in a situation where I ran a 500-mile race once. When you start seeing those blue and yellow flags flashing on your screen, and you're trying to focus on the corner at hand with worn tyres, as it is, the last thing you need is another distraction, Aaron. So that's the reason why I say just move out the way down the straightaway where possible, because at the end of the day, the last thing you need is even more distractions. If you're a lap down, there's a good chance your car just isn't handling very well, and the last thing you want is to have something else to make your life even harder on track.
Exactly. That's competitive drivers, they really, nobody wants to see the blue flag for them. Often in karting, I've heard many race directors say, if you see that flag, there's a race going on and you're not in it.
Yeah.
Rule, maybe. But at the same time, if your car isn't working well, maybe you can get behind other drivers that their car is working, see where your car isn't working, build on it, and instead of getting in the way, ruffling some feathers, and potentially putting yourself in a bad spot, all it takes sometimes is lifting on the straightaway, go single file through the corner, and it's a net gain for both instead of racing them into the corner, going side by side, potentially making contact, and just making it a bad day for all. Just lift off a little bit, go single file, and both cars can gain time with that instead of making it life difficult for the overtaking driver.
Yeah, just to let you know, Logan Simmons is on pit road. He is a lap down, number 21 car. So the 28th place driver is on pit road right now doing what looks to be a standard service, 9.6 out and away. And this is what I talked about earlier on our journey. The first 150 laps of this race basically is an extended test session, except you just got to carry on going. There's no stopping to really do major repairs to your car. But what I mean by that is that, you know, when you get some clean air, this is now your chance to work out how is that balance of the race car? How is it different to when I've been running in a quote-unquote pack-like situation? Because that gives you then some really good things that you can then think about for your next pit stop. If you come up behind a driver and you struggle to pass and the tools aren't working, is there anything you might be able to do to change? Because you can change wing angles, you can change tyre pressures at a pit stop. This is all data collection at this stage, and it will be for about another 100 laps.
Very much so, but you know, there's two ways to look at it, Will. Right now, watch NATO, the 80 car slipping back through the field, already dropped to 6th place. I mean, there's only so much data collection you can do, Will, if your car isn't handling the best underneath you. Only so many changes that you can do with the tools available to you. NATO's starting to struggle now, but it's the likes of Olsen and Demerit and Costantini doing that experimentation, trying different lines out of turn number 4, seeing exactly what they need to do coming to the checkered flag on lap number 200. Like you said, no one remembers who leads lap number 199. It's all about who's there at the checkered.
I remember both Marco Andretti and Danica Patrick both having miserable days at the Indy 500 around that 2009, 10, 11 period, and everything they were doing was just making it worse and worse and worse. And actually at one point, I remember for Marco Andretti, they just basically said, okay, we're going back to how it was at the start of the race, and all of a sudden the car came alive. I've got a feeling that NATO did something to that car, Aaron, on that first pit stop, because it's a different car compared to when it came on towards pit road just over 15 laps ago. And that's not fully just tyre wear, because he's only 6 laps maximum older in terms of tyres. That is not a difference of 4.5 on the racetrack.
That car looks just very unstable. I think he's having a hard time committing to the corner. It just flexes on entry. It does not look like a pleasant ride right now. I think he's doing everything he can just to keep it underneath him. One thing that could be affecting that is this track is going through many changes. We had cloud cover over the north end for a good chunk of time, so even though it says the track temperature is 113, it's a tale of two ends of the track, because the north end has been cloud covered, the south end bright and sunny. So right now, if his car may be handling good on one end and he gets to either the north and south end, and then that car becomes a completely different animal. So could be this weather really affecting his car at the moment.
And interestingly enough, the track conditions have gone down by about a degree since the start of this race. It's about yellow flag then. So our third caution of the day, that will change a lot of things now in terms of this race. Third yellow flag of the day, and it is Dakota DeCenzo, by the looks of that, who is out of the race. Solo car incident. Looks as though this is going to be a case of pushing up into turn 1.
Well, Dakota... Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, he might have had a little bit of help. The traditional 2 cars into 1. Oh, we see this usually at least once or twice in the month of May, and 2 cars into 1. Car peers to the inside, outside car turns in, and they meet, and DeCenzo is going to be out of this race.
Yep, that's unfortunate to see there, Arjuna. But this really does change everything now in terms of strategy, because Aaron made the point at the start of this race in the first caution. If that first caution was 3-4 laps later, you'd see everyone towards pit road. Well, this caution's 3-4 laps later into a run. NATO is 2/3 of the way through a stint. Other people are getting close to halfway through a stint. Pit road, oh, it's going to be busy.
It's going to be busy, and we're approaching one of those windows, Will, where you can try and make it potentially on green flag stops with a little bit of fuel saving and try a light a slight shift in your strategy here. We'll see what happens. Just wanted to call out, by the way, Dakota's not going to be too happy there in the 43 car with that incident. He was part of a solo car incident for one of the 2 cautions last time around, and Will, he had talked to me about wanting to make it to the end of 500 miles, see where he could place at the end of this race, and, well, unfortunately, about 80 laps in, he's back in the garage, and that's looking like terminal damage.
It's exactly the same, a 500-mile race here compared to endurance racing, the 6, 12, 24-hour races. For many people, it's not always about the winning, it's about the finishing. The finishing of a race is a victory in itself, be it, you know, completing the entire 500 miles, being it a lap down, 2 laps down. The finishing, the seeing the checkered flag can often be as important as a victory to some of the people in this field. But pit road is open, and as we expected, it is a very, very busy place. One driver, by the looks of it, stays out, and that is Marco Brazil. Who else do you think was going to stay out there, Aaron?
I'm going to question that call because, as earlier mentioned, we are at the window now. If you're looking at 30-lap runs, we're going to be coming up on 77, so 107, 130, 767, 97. You save 3 laps, you can make it to the end, as Constantini does win the battle off pit road. Won't be the race lead, but does win the battle off pit road. Maybe Brazil's thinking that maybe we'll see him pit on the 1 to green, which could be that 30-lap to the end.
By the way, don't ask us what that pit crew's doing at the very front of pit road. I think they're still in shock after watching the Speed 51 500 yesterday. One of the best broadcasts we've ever seen, actually. One of the most fun broadcasts we've ever seen. But Marco Brazil is leading the field right now in the number 812 car. Riccardo Constantini, second place. You got Olsen third, Christopher Demeritt in fourth. Adam Blocker rounds out your top 5. Marco Brazil is only 14 laps onto that set of tyres. We did pit later than other people around him, Arjuna, but we know how the next 16-odd laps are going to go.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of deja vu here. Marco likes these alternate strategies, as I'm going to call them here, but, I mean, even 12 laps into his stint, Will, if I'm doing the math correctly, when the caution came out, those tires are going to be worn, and Marco is going to be swarmed by the pack behind here. So this is going to be an interesting restart. We're already 3 cautions into this race, surpassing our 2 from last year. And a lot of pressure, I think, on Marco Brazil to keep it clean as the field comes around him.
Yep, so one driver is going to get themselves the wave around in just a moment's time. That is going to be the O2 car and Matt Oliver, due to the fact he is ahead of Marco Brazil. There was Logan Simmons, who was probably a little bit angry that Marco Brazil decided to stay out, because otherwise he would have got the wave around and would have moved back onto the lead lap. Instead, he's come in to get some fuel and some tyres. Oliver, by the way, though, is 16 laps into a run, so he will need to have another caution in the next 10 to 15 laps if he wants to remain on the lead lap, because otherwise he'll be off sequence and again a lap down. If you've ever played Snake on the Nokia 3210, Nokia 3310, that is basically what you're going to start seeing in about a minute and a half's time. Marco Brazil leading the way. He's going to be very, very defensive then. As soon as the field exits this point, basically, in a lap, expect to see him come all the way down to the inside line. And Constantini, Olsen et al., I wouldn't be surprised to see Constantini just try and run that high line straight into turn 3, Arjuna, and basically say, you know what, I'm going for it. So Brazil gets into dirty air on this restart, he's going to fall like a rock.
I'm going to pick my words carefully here. I don't know how risky some of these drivers behind are going to take it. Marco has a bit of a reputation from some of these drivers for racing very hard and very aggressive, and despite the fact that he is on those worn tires, I think the likes of Costantini, Olsen, Demeritt, Blocker, for example, all know that they need to get to the end to be able to win this one. So we'll see what happens here. It's going to be very interesting down into turn number 1.
Live timing and scoring, RaceSpot.WTF/Indy. As we have got 122 laps to go at the line. Pace car is in. And picking up the pace then comes Marco Brazil, green flag in the air. We are back to racing after caution number 3 here in the open wheels 500 mile race, which today is being presented by Mitchell Transmissions. Through turn number 1, through turn number 2, Brazil desperate to get that run at the start. He's got that, but now he should actually be okay into turn 3 this time around. The challenge will start coming into turn 1 next lap. Meanwhile, Christopher Demerit was looking there down to the inside of Hugo Olsen. Not able to do anything then. Down into turn 3 and already on the outside, Michele Constantini is looking as they come past the yard of bricks. You've got Olsen there in the mix as well. Are we going to try and go 3 wide again? No, we're not, but it looks like Constantini has got himself the race lead. And as I said, Brazil on those old tyres struggling there on the ultra inside line, Aaron.
Bad contact, that's going to put Demerit into the wall.
Just as we thought. Caution is out. Constantini then through turn 2, pushes wide, and Christopher Demerit out of the race. Arjuna, here comes the replay.
I mean, what did I say, Will? Old tires, it was a recipe for disaster, and Marco's going to push up here, coming through the short chute. He tries to cover off the run from Demerit, actually, on the entry to the corner here, but never getting close to that apex. Demerit nowhere to go, and fortunate there that the 144 doesn't get collected in a sickening incident.
I want to see another look there. I want to see it because it looked as though that Brazil just had no grip on the inside line into turn 2, and of course, it's always so deceptive turn 2. You always think you breathe out. Okay, I've got through turn 1. Everything's a little bit better. But turn 2 is far tighter than you actually think it is. Yes, I know it's a 90-degree corner. But coming into the corner, you can see the back end wiggles a little bit. And then he tries to move down to the inside line. But that car is just pushing up out of the grey all the way through the apex there. And Paul Christopher Demerit, bam. That's all I can say, Aaron.
This is, you, if you're Demerit, you know he's on old tires. You know he's not going to be able to hold the bottom. He should have. That put Demerit in a bad spot, washing up like that. But I go back to just because you can doesn't mean you should. Still 120-ish laps to go. Going on the outside of a driver on old tires puts yourself in a bad spot. Yes, Marco could have held the bottom, not washed up, but at the same time, you know there's old tires. Do you trust him enough to go around the outside?
As I can't remember if it's Goodyear or Cheever said after the end of the 2011 Indy 500 about J.R. Hildebrand, all you need to sometimes do is throttle back, get through the corner, throttle back, get through the corner, because it's just straight away ahead of you. And then after that, that's where you can make your move if you need to. But Demerit's going to be a mixture of livid, upset, confused, I think there are, Juno, after that one. It's a shame for him, but we still got 26 drivers running in this race.
And still a lot of big names in the field. Retirements as they stand: Demerit, DiCienzo, Young O, Chad Simpson, Henry Bennett, and Tim Doyle, along with Andreas Eek. You mentioned the emotions there for Demerit, Will, and I don't want to say I kind of called that one, and I can read the future, but a little bit of mind reading was going on there. I've been in that situation with Marco myself in the past Indy 500 month of May, and unfortunate for Demerit. What can you do in that situation, Will? Do you avoid going around the outside, check up your momentum, lose potentially 3, 4, 5 positions as the cars behind you make their way through, or do you stick it around the outside and trust the driver on the inside? Demerit trusted Marco. Unfortunately, Marco didn't have those tires to stick down on the white line.
I think you make a good point. Do you trust the driver? And you would always argue in motor racing, you should always trust the driver around you. Without naming names, of course, in the annals of the iRacing IndyCar community, there have been drivers who people trust more than others. And I think that there's always a risk on the other side where there's been occasions when people don't race people because of their quote-unquote reputation. I'm not going to make any comment about Brazil, reputations, this, that, or the other. My job's here to call the race. But sometimes, especially in between the teams, to quote Taylor Swift, sometimes there is bad blood between teams on this in this race. I mean, you know, I've managed an IndyCar team. There's plenty of bad blood between myself and other people when I was being a team manager, after being a team manager. And those factions, what might look like a 50-50 incident, Aaron, which probably is a 50-50 incident, all of a sudden, it becomes this huge mountain of someone deliberately did this, someone could have done that. When actually, if it was another driver, you might look at it more objectively.
I think we don't need to name any names, as you mentioned. The only stat we need to look at is 16 lap old tires. That's the only thing we need to look at. That was the heart of the issue, and Marco had every right to be out on old tires. If the yellows fell right, he may have leapfrogged 10 drivers. So, malicious? No, just old tires, and as competitive as we are up front, Demerit didn't think he could lose those 4 or 5 spots and still have a chance at this victory. So this incident probably going to be talked about, stewed about for quite some time, and this might be one of the storylines that we are talking about next year on, hey, do you remember back in 2020 when? That's going to be one of these moments.
You do realise that we're only 6 months and 1 week away from doing this all over again for the 2021 iRacing Indy 500. It's almost timed out perfectly in 6-month intervals. In fact, I do believe it is exactly 6 months since the last race, because, of course, this year the Indy 500 is a week later due to the way Memorial Day works, etc., etc. Worth noting, Brazil hasn't actually come on towards pit road here, Aaron. That's the thing that surprises me.
Well, you don't want. I think we might be going back to green. Let's see if the pace car turns. Yeah. But you don't want to be Tony Kanaan at Pocono 2011, 2012 and waffling on strategy. Make it and stick to it. Drivers behind, got to keep that in mind. Old tires for our 4th place finish. Green flag back in the air.
Yeah, indeed. So we are back to green. And for Brazil, actually, I was just thinking about that. He basically wants a caution in exactly 13 laps' time, because then everyone else will come on towards pit road. He will lose track position due to other drivers having to take more fuel than him, but other drivers having to take less fuel than him, in other words. But at least then he'll be kind of back on sequence. Front of your field, they're thinking about going 3 wide once again. Hugo Olsen, though, is the one who leads away into turn 3. Brazil, Pavelski, Brazil and NATO, the 2 Brazilian drivers going side by side now through turn number 4 on track. And AJ Burton, haven't really talked about him that much in this race, but he is now running in P6 as Brazil. Well, that's weird, now. Why not do it under yellow?
Yeah,
black flag. There we are.
Yeah, there you go. Tanner Watkins, race control, giving a black flag for that contact. But we must say now, Will, Adam Blocker looks to try and get to the lead of this race. i5G lost one of their drivers, but Pavelski has replaced Demerit out front. But it's now 2 Power Slide versus 2 i5G cars.
3 wide in towards turn 3. That was easy. Well done, guys. As Olsen there from... That's what we mean about trust as well, Arjuna. Those 3 drivers... 3 wide in towards turn number 3. They say, oh, you can't go 3 wide in racing conditions at Indy. Those 3 drivers proved that if you understand how to run the racetrack properly, easy.
Yeah, and they just did it again down into turn number 1. Blocker on the inside line. This is where we'll see how this is going to develop over the course of the stint. Right now, tires are fresh. Inside line will be the more optimal line, but as the run progresses, car's going to migrate up to that high line. And here goes Olsen trying to make it 3 wide.
Yeah, once again. I say 3 wide is easy. Doesn't mean you have to do it every single lap, guys. Come on. Calm it down a little bit. Those tyres are going to start losing their sheen at some point soon. Blocker on the inside. Costantini on the outside. Hugo Olsen there in 3rd place. Pavelski in 4th place. Blocker has been in so many fun situations here at Indy. He's a former iRacing Indy 500 winner. In that number 74 car. Constantini alongside him. He has won a big 500-mile race at Indianapolis as well. As look at this, these 3 drivers out front. We've also Matt Pavelski. Pavelski just sat there thinking, go on guys, burn your tyres up. I'll get you in a few laps, Aaron.
I don't know if we've seen 2 drivers go side by side for 2 continuous laps. Usually we see the leapfrogging game, so a little bit different. And as we're going to go side by side again down the straightaway, the only line Constantini has is the outside. Will he clear him into 1? Not quite. We've seen some extreme patience out of Hugo Olsen. He several times could have taken this 3 wide, has not yet. we'll see how long that patient goes, because having 2 cars in front of him really using his tires up.
Yeah, so there was some communication between race control and Marco Brazil. Brazil was saying that that penalty was lamentable, and he was hitted, clap, clap. So some sarcasm there from Marco Brazil. Clearly wasn't happy with the penalty. Those watching online on social media, well, they're saying a slightly different story. Many people saying that the penalty maybe was something that was more justified. So we've got this 4-horse battle going on out front. I was going to start talking about AJ Burton. He's been so quiet so far in this race, but he is now running in P number 5 here, Arjuna, up 14 places.
Yeah, it's been a great run, and now these I5G drivers really starting to occupy the top 10. You've got Costantini, Pavelski, Lichtenberg up there in the top 6 as things stand. They've got a couple of other drivers who have been in this field, and we'll see how this one works out for them.
Indeed, Chris Stouffer as well, up 21 places. Great run here by Stouffer. That's what we mean by it doesn't necessarily matter where you start, it's about how you build your car throughout the course of this race. We're quickly going to get a quick word with Christopher Demerit. If I said the word quickly one more time, something magical might happen. But Chris, 144 car, incident, turn number 2. Marco Brazil, talk us through it.
Yeah, it's 2 for 2 and turn 2 on the outside for me this year. Yeah, I needed to go, and I thought he would take more of the traditional racing line, but his tires were so shot that he just pushed up the track. And by the time he was pushing, I was pretty much at his right rear, so I was hoping he was going to lift out enough, but he didn't. It's so hard to pass here. I pretty much couldn't afford to try and cross over and go to the inside, because I would probably just get drafted by on the outside, really. So unfortunate, but I'm still pretty happy with how our car handles, and looks like it'll be between us and Power Slide in terms of pace, unless any crazy fuel stretch ends up happening later on. That's pretty much it so far. Looking forward to helping strategize with Trina.
Well, thank you very much, Christopher Demerit from the I5G team. And he sounds despondent, but thinking big picture, he's still got a number of people for that team who are in this race, Aaron. And the best thing you can do right now, go and help your teammates, help strategize.
Yeah, definitely taking the high road on that interview. And that's one thing that sim racers will learn. You learn that if you're moving up the ranks in real life, you very quickly learn how to handle the media, how to handle interviews. Going off the rail, calling people out, not going to get you too far. So a very professional interview there, and looking at making this a team win. So we'll see if his expertise on the pit box will help his team.
Yeah, keeping an eye out on Chris Stouffer, by the way, because, as I say, he's running in P9. He is our highest moving driver in the field here today, in that Power Slide Motorsports number 13 car. And we've talked already here, Arjun, about this really becoming mainly a 2-team race. I say mainly because there are 1 or 2 people outside that. Also NATO, of course, Interlagos Motorsports, who can still be a big factor, depending on how things go. But it looks as though that Chris Stouffer, qualifying wasn't his strong point, but he's been able to work the traffic. And if he's top 5 and we get a late race restart, then he surely is going to be one driver to keep an eye out on.
Very much so. Stouffer is charged up for this one. Well, I mentioned that technical issue he was dealing during the qualifying weekend. Well, he made it into the field and is revved up trying to make his way up through the field. We are talking, though, about the possibility of some of these other teams fighting and contending for the win. I'm not so sure about that at this point, Will. Look at the top 6, all Power Slide and I5G as things stand. NATO back in 7th, struggling a bit more in the dirty air. Jason Brophy, the highest Team Talent car in the bright yellow number 88 that you see in the middle of your shot right now. Team Talent not so confident about their race setup coming into this weekend. They've got 10 drivers in the field, and currently the highest runner of them is in 8th, so not going so smoothly right now for the Team Talent guys.
Yeah, we were about to have an interview with Dakota DeCenzo. Fortunately, we are not going to be able to do it at this stage, so we'll carry on. talking away through this race. We have 106 laps of this event to go, and we've still got a long way. By the way, just to give you an update on track conditions, we get closer to the halfway point. Track temperature has shot up by 6 degrees Celsius in the last 20 minutes, Arjuna.
Yeah, very much so, and this is such a different factor to the Open Wheels 500 compared to the iRacing Indy 500, where you have static weather during the race, so you have that 119 Fahrenheit track temperature that doesn't change for all 500 miles of racing. We're already over 51 degrees Celsius, so that's an increase of 10 degrees Celsius from the race start, and the possibility as we continue to go here, temperature is going to reach in excess of 130 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, and that's going to make this race more and more slick as we go through. And that is going to mean also that the ability to really draft up behind the car and do that slingshotting that you see at the start of the runs, that will become more and more difficult also. We do now have the opportunity to talk to the Canadian driver of Dakota DeCenzo, and Dakota, unfortunately, out of the race early on, involved in one of our 4 cautions already here today. Talk us through it.
Yeah, it was just netcode. There's been a lot of it today, and unfortunately I got in it. I didn't want to be in it, and yeah, just nothing I could really do.
And in terms of this race, of course, qualifying was so difficult to make it into the field. In terms of your emotions, having to sit out of this event, being already 23 laps down, being out of the event in our 3rd caution of the day, what's the emotions for you right now, and what's the rebuilding process to the next time you take part in the 500-mile Indianapolis race?
Pretty disappointed. I spent probably all last weekend doing race runs, qualifying runs, a good 10 hours for a prep. Even last night, I don't think I went to bed till like 4 because we were just working on the setup a bit, and we just have to do it all over again for the next 500. So that's all.
Well, thank you very much, Dakota DeCenzo there for the Total Downforce Racing with Team Talent car. But we are getting ourselves closer and closer to halfway. And again, talking about the change in this racetrack here, Aaron, we talked about the in-car tools. That's an easy thing to talk about. The anti-roll bars, both at the front and the rear, and the weight jacker. Now, in my opinion, I don't think that's going to be enough. If the track conditions are going to raise, and they've raised another 1.5 degrees in the time that since we last talked about it 4 minutes ago, I don't think that's going to be enough. Weight jacket alone is not going to be enough. Anti-roll bars isn't going to be enough. Is it going to be a wing change or a tyre pressure change do you think these drivers might need to start thinking about?
One or the other. The green flag came out at about so the sim time for what we're watching, it's currently 1:14, so almost accurate time of day. So the sun's going to be getting higher and higher right above the racetrack, and as I've been talking, 125 degrees, so it's gone up just in this 30 seconds that I've been trying to give an answer. And for the teams, the same thing. They thought they had an answer, and it's gone up again. So got to watch the skies. One cloud can dictate who's going to win, who's going to lose potentially on if it catches them out. You want to... It's a tough call, Will. It really is, and we've gone down a degree, so...
It was 2010, wasn't it, when qualifying... It was Ryan Hunter-Ray, yeah, 2010 I think it was. Ryan Hunter-Ray trying to make the field in the Andretti car, when there was just that one cloud, and everyone was kind of getting themselves out the line. All of a sudden, the cloud cover came over, and then whoever's on track basically gained themselves a couple of miles an hour instantaneously in qualifying.
I wish I could remember which team this was, but I remember a story from either the late 80s or early 90s that they actually had people west of town watching clouds that were going to be headed over to find the window of when that cloud potentially would be over the track to get into the qualifying line. Yeah. Of course, you're not going to send your team's spotters out way west near 465 on here, but that's how important one cloud can be. It can be huge, and already we've lost 2 more degrees on this racetrack. So now we were going from a really slick track inching up 125, 130, back down to 122. So if you make that change, Will, and the track cools down, did you overcompensate?
Well, that's a good point. That is a really good point. And again, it's about balance. I didn't want to say anything bad about Dakota. You mentioned those 10 hours setting up. And I was thinking when I was preparing some of these Indy 500s in the past, there was a driver, Monica Clara Brand, who once allegedly, I'm going to say the word allegedly, turned over 3,000 laps in preparation for an Indy 500 back in 2011, Arjun, which is the first year I started commentating. 3,000 laps of practice for a 500-mile race. It's just insane. But these big teams, you know, they're probably turning double that in terms of getting all their drivers out in different situations so they can adapt to a moment like this when they have got to think about what call do we make in terms of, do we add downforce, we take downforce away, will tire pressures be more stable, so on and so forth.
Yeah, very much so, but it's always fun, and, you know, maybe some of our YouTube chat can chime in here, Will, because we've got some of the Porsche Esports Super Cup drivers talking about some of their own interests as well. Well, Brian Lockwood, the reason I bring up the Super Cup, 60 hours of practice he put in for the first round of this past World Championship season. There's a lot of time and commitment that goes into these races, and it's good to see a lot of people having some fun doing laps here at the Speedway. But Liam Quinn right now, as you see up on your screen, yes, but Orman slides up the track. But Quinn's struggling right now, Will, with some side pod damage, and he is dropping through the field.
Yep, and just like young O earlier on, by the way, O is out the race. We did say he was on pit road for an extended period of time. He is now out of the race. You get side pod damage, and this isn't like Darlington. At Darlington, they say you get your Darlington stripes in the NASCAR. The thing is, if you try and get a Darlington stripe at this racetrack, you're going to bend a wishbone. You're going to get some side pod damage. You want to get as close to the wall as you possibly can, but you do not want to hit it. You don't even want to graze it. And Liam Quinn, unfortunately, that is terminal for him. He will want to try and finish this race, but he is now a second of a lap slower than he was doing minimum. He is now 2 seconds off the pace, and that basically means he will be lapped every 20 laps of green flag racing here, Arjuna.
Yeah, I mean, it is crucial, and right now his teammate Andrew Wood in the wood-colored Team Talent car is catching him with Adam Crane, and Quinn right now in terms of speed is losing about, I think it's about 10 kilometers an hour at the end of each of these straights right now, Will, so Quinn's starting to struggle, and well, it's just going to be a long 94 laps for him till the end.
I was just looking at my timing monitor, and yeah, it's 10 kilometers an hour easily in towards turn 1. So here's a look at your top 3 then. Olsen still leading the way, and Olsen's actually pulled away a 1 second gap. This is really useful now for Hugo Olsen, because it means that Michele Constantini has lost the draft, and that will mean that Constantini is no longer able to really start saving fuel. Adam Blocker runs in 3rd place. We're looking at him right now on your screen. He is currently 8 tenths of a second behind Cosentini. So what we mentioned about the track temperatures going up, it kind of accentuates that second part of the run, Aaron. And we are almost at the end of a run. We're almost heading into green flag pit stops.
Yeah, 93 laps to go, and if 30 laps is our benchmark, we are 3 laps away from being able to pit then at 60 to go and 30 to go. And if you're Constantini, I think as soon as the window opens, you got to come in and take it. You're still within 1 corner of the leader, so you should be able to stay on the lead lap so long as you don't make any mistakes on entry. You got to do something to leapfrog, because if you follow the leader, well, then you're going to be in the same spot on the next run, burn your tire off, and Hugo Olsen will be smiling all the way to a bigger lead than he has now.
Yeah, and it's going to be key to note when these drivers come on towards pit road. If they get to maybe another lap or so, then they should be good to do it without having to massively fuel save. And I think they are now at that window where if they were to come on towards pit road now and this race went green to the end, Arjuna, they should be able to make it to the end of the race without any fuel saving.
Yeah, absolutely no fuel saving at all, and that sometimes does open up the door potentially for some drivers to do a little bit of fuel saving, save some of the time in pit road, and get the jump done on pit road. I forget what Aaron had said slightly earlier in the broadcast, but he talks about, losing a second in pit road being like losing an entire football field out on track. So pit stop's crucial, and here comes the leader.
Yeah, indeed so. So here is Hugo Olsen on towards pit road. Remember those points we talked about, pit in, pit out. But also, at this stage, Aaron, there's one thing that you need to make sure that you do. Whilst you've got those 9 seconds on pit road, as well as taking a swig of water, reset your in-car tools.
That's anybody that has a spotter talking in their ear right now. As Olsen misses his stall, he had to back up. That's a half-second delay. That is going to be... I don't want to say devastating, but for Constantini now, he can capitalize on his stop. We'll have to see what the pit out times are on just how much that costs Hugo.
So it's a 10-second stop. That's not that bad. 36.2. That is bad, actually. That's about 3 seconds lost, potentially. So there's always a risk. And again, this is why, in terms of those phases I set out at the start of the race, the fuel management, tyre management, traffic management, and in-car tools, the pit in, the pit out. The pit in, the pit out is one that quite often people don't practice as often. But that's also difficult to do, Arjuna, because it's easy enough to put on a set of tyres, do 5 laps, drive back into the pits. Great. It's a lot harder when you're doing it on 33-lap-old tyres, but in order to get to that point, you've got to run 33 laps.
Yeah, very much so. But you see the time there for Costantini, 36 seconds as well. So Olsen actually hasn't lost too much with that slight mistake now. Costantini is going to come out right behind Olsen, get up into the draft, and get back up to racing speed as the rest of the cars dive onto the pit lane. Blocker, Lichtenberg, Brophy, and Challoner, the last cars out there, as Adam Crane actually goes 1 lap longer than the rest of the field.
Yep, so Adam Crane will take over the lead of this race, at least momentarily, in the Satellite Racing number 34 car. I know the guys at Satellite Racing will be happy with that one. Got a couple of friends over there, as it will only be momentarily, but at least they get their VRS-sponsored car on the screen for at least a moment. But they should be coming on towards pit road themselves, looking on the exit of corner number 4 for them now. Adam Blocker, by the way, had a really good pit stop. We're going to pick that one up in just a second, as we do see now Adam Crane on towards pit road, slowing it down to 55 miles an hour. You know what? Back in my day, I feel like an old man right now, but back when I used to race, and you'll remember this, Aaron, the pit cones we used to use for this race would be the same as the NASCAR pit cones. And that meant it was scary. It's a nice way of saying it, pitching out of turn number 4.
Oh, the cones were actually on the racetrack,
yes.
And getting down to pit road speed was next to impossible if you did the line that we are doing now. You had to start slowing up near the mid to exit of turn 4, which if you had a car behind you, communication was vital. Many races were lost, slowing down mid-corner, getting hit from the rear. So thankfully they have moved it to where the NTT IndyCar Series does have it on pit road. So these drivers, not as scary, but you're just transferring where you have to be aggressive. Being on the brakes, very easy to lock up, and that attenuator really likes eating up race cars.
Dylan Freckleton leads the race due to the fact that he has not yet been on pit road this time around under green flag conditions. So the number 313 driver is leading the race just for the moment anyway. But Pete, 1, 2, 3 net are all in the same piece of real estate, all in that same football field, so to say, as it is Constantini who's now overtaken Olsen, but Adam Blocker, due to the fact he had a pit stop 1 second quicker than both Olsen and Constantini, has gotten back into this lead battle. And that shows you the reason why, Aaron. A good pit entrant and a good pit exit can make or break your race.
If Blocker can do that one more time, if he can stay up and not have the same tire fall off, he's going to be a contender to leapfrog these two and potentially break the draft. So Olsen, Constantini, they got to keep that in mind that, hey, okay, you may have been conservative with 3 pit stops to go, but this next one, you're going to have to do better, which can lead to potentially a speed infraction on that entry. They're going to have to be on the razor's edge if they're going to want to beat Blocker, because they cannot give up that same time on the next stop.
Let's give you then a bit of a mid-race summary here from the 2020 Open Wheels 500-mile race presented by Mitchell Transmissions. We've had a number of leaders here today, but they have mainly involved the likes of Michele Constantini, Hugo Olsen, Adam Blocker, Matt Pavelski. We had a period of time, this is our second long green flag run. We had a couple of cautions early, then we had a nice long green flag run, and then 2 cautions again, kind of back to back. We've had a total right now of 8 drivers out of the race. They are Logan Simmons, Christopher Demerit, Dakota DeCenzo, Young O, Chad Simpson, Henry Bennett, Tim Doyle, and Andreas Eek. And the first 2 cautions were caused by incidents out of turn number 4. The other 2 cautions were on the opposite side of the racetrack. Our most recent caution happening down at turn number 2, an incident between Marco Brazil and Christopher Demerit. 83 laps to go then here in the 2020 Open Wheels 500, and our race coverage today is presented by the Majors Garage as we get ready to do a bit of RaceSpotTV fan immersion as we go on board with Adam Blocker in the number 74 Powerslide Motorsports car. Of your top 4 drivers, only one has not ever won a 500-mile race in either the Open Wheels 500 Championship Series or the iRacing Indianapolis 500. That is the driver who is leading the way right now. A Scandinavian driver, Hugo Olsen, in the number 39 car, driving for Powerslide Motorsports. I don't think Hugo, apart from his kind of conservative, I'm going to call him conservative, not slow here, Arjuna. I'm going to say the word conservative for a reason here, because I had a teammate back in the day who would be conservative and kind of build their way up to that last pit stop where if they did need to go flat out, they'd go flat out. But unless they absolutely had to, they'd be slightly more conservative so they didn't get the speeding penalty. Apart from that, Hugo Olsen hasn't really put a foot wrong all race long.
Well, and you put me on the spot at the start of this one, Will, and I predicted Hugo Olsen was going to have a very good run of things, and, well, as a member of Powerslide Motorsports, I'm very, very happy right now to see them running second and third. Both Olsen and Blocker look like they've got a good car underneath them. Get back to fourth place, 5 seconds out on track. If we go green to the end here, Will, it's all about how these Powerslide teammates want to work together and maybe try and bully Costantini out of getting a back-to-back win here in the Open Wheels 500. Only Brandon Traino has managed to do it in the iRacing official Indy 500. It took 11 years for someone to do that, if you can believe it. Can Costantini do it in just the second running of the Open Wheels 500?
Yeah, that would be incredible to see. And you've got to be careful when you say, team allegiances, because I don't want our TeamSpeak server to go down, because that's powered, of course, by our friends over at Apex. So Michele Costantini leading the way right now in that number 66 Apex Racing stroke Broken Arrow stroke i5G car. But the thing is, Arjun made a really good point there, Aaron, that when you're in a situation where you've got 2 drivers from an opposing team around you, you are basically just having to ride and deal with the shenanigans and not get too hot-headed, not let it get under your skin, just turn laps as you would normally do otherwise.
Yeah, very good point there. I think I mentioned it at the beginning with running with teammates. You don't right now want to be the one to take your teammate out. So riding around third as Blocker is right now, great position. We know he can gain those extra seconds on the pit stop. So right now, why risk your teammate? Why risk any shenanigans on mixing it up when you can just hang in there? Looking at the lap count, 75 to go now. We are halfway through this run. So for Blocker and now Olsen, last time it was reversed, Olsen was the leader. Costantini was in second at this point 30 laps ago. So will Olsen have the tires to get back around? It's really a matter of timing, Will. Being the leader when you can no longer make those runs, make those passes. Has Olsen mistimed this? Has Costantini played this perfectly? We'll find out in 15 laps on who will lead us to pit road.
And again, we're kind of halfway through a run right now. So this is when we're going to see less and less of the slipstreaming and more of the, what I'd like to call the pre-DW12 style of IndyCar racing, where the field does get more spread out. It becomes more difficult to really try and close right up to the rear. And again, for those of you just joining us, the aero screen really has made it a little bit more difficult on the tires, and consequently, it's made it a little bit more difficult for drivers to really get close and run close when you get about halfway through a run, which is where we are right now. Another point that Adriana made here, Aaron, about teammates working together. Do they want to work together? The answer to that is yes, until about lap number 190, 195.
Yeah, right now it's help me, don't hurt me. But when we get to the 10 to go, teammates out the window. You don't want to risk your relationship with the team or teammates, but we've said it, and I think one of the best sports intros, any sport of all time, was the 2011 Indy 500, where you're either first or forgotten. That's what we will have inside 10 to go. Teammates, team allegiances, forget it. Win at all costs.
Don't call it one of the best. That was the best intro
the best, yes,
to an
the
Indy 500. And it didn't even need Delta Force. I'm sorry. But if you haven't had the chance, go and watch it. The 2011 introduction to ABC's telecast. By the way, thank you to ABC/ESPN for allowing us to use the classic IndyCar on ABC/ESPN music at the top of this broadcast. Incredible for them to license that out to us for this race. And I will say as well that the way that teammates work together, it is becoming less of a factor the more the field starts to get spread out. Just keeping an eye down the field a little bit, and traffic will start becoming a bit more of an issue soon. Matt Holliber right now is 43 seconds. Last time around, a 43.928. He is a lap down. Dylan Frackleton, however, is close to going a lap down. Daniel Johnson is closest to going a lap down. Niall McBride is also there in that mix as well. Niall McBride here, Arjun, is one of these drivers that I'm a little bit confused. Why is all the way down in P number 21? Because even in this build, he has the opportunity to be doing so much better than that. But meanwhile, Joshua Chin is on pit road, and there is something wrong with that race car. And Chin, the bad luck strikes again.
Yeah, Chin's hit the wall. Let's see if we can take a look at this replay as well. We'll try and catch it up on the replay here. You can see he's actually already going slow in between turns 1 and 2. I'll try and get it up on your screen, but Chin out of this race, Will.
Yep, and again, with Chin, we talked about it earlier on. It's either he has everything going for him or absolutely nothing going for him. And let's have a look. This is going to be then on the exit of turn 4. Always flying through here, coming down towards the yard of bricks in that number 93 Team Chimera with Team Talent car. So in towards turn 1. Runs a normal line through that first part. Pushes up a little bit and into the wall. And that is the classic turn number 1 wall impact there. I think every IndyCar driver on iRacing who's ever turned a couple of laps around Indy has had that exact incident. The thing for me, though, is that happened in clean air, or at least cleanish air there, Aaron.
One thing, the evolution of iRacing, you talked about back in 2011, Monica Clara Brand doing 3,000 laps. That was a totally static environment. Nothing ever changed. Now we're dealing with clouds, we're dealing with marbles. So as this run has progressed, as we've stayed green, if you get half a groove, a car groove outside of your normal turn-in, the car has absolutely no grip, and you will find that wall really quickly.
Yeah. Question, by the way, can this race finish under yellow? Yes. This is a 500-mile race. This isn't NASCAR. It's 500 miles from the beginning of the race until the end of the race. And after 500 miles, the race will end. And we'll have a winner. And that will be the end of that. There are no red flags in this race. And if we do get to lap number 200, and there is someone who is going to be the first person past the Isle of Bricks, they will be the person who wins this race here today. We're on board right now with Dylan Freckleton. So this is what we're talking about. Drivers going down a lap. And now, Michele Constantini, we saw this in May, Aaron. We saw this in some cases last year in this race. When you're kind of midway through a stint, which is what Constantini is right now, getting to 2/3 of the way through a run, it's going to become a lot harder for him to get past cars. And I think Freckleton there just eased him along a little bit.
It's very easy to be only as fast as the last place car on track on older tires. Dylan, we mentioned earlier, good etiquette, lifted off the throttle, let the leader by. Now Hugo Olsen's going to have to work that dirty air, which is a lot harder now than it was 20 laps ago. So Hugo Olsen under 200 miles an hour in turn 1. We've been seeing about 205 to 203 in clean air, 3 miles an hour slower. This is just, Constantini's got to be loving this.
Olsen's lost a second this lap alone here, Arjuna. So this is the whole thing. If you're the leader, for some reason, you know, they're always let the leader by, but then second, third, fourth, fifth place, etc. behind them, not always as obvious who you're fighting it. And I mean, Freckleton has only got one person behind him in terms of position, but he's running as an independent. So that's one thing to note as well. He's not a part of one of these larger teams that have spotters and other people as blockers going to have to try and go aggressive through turn number 2 there. Freckleton hasn't got a team of people in his ear saying, you're racing this person, you can let this person by, so on and so forth. So this is the reason why blue flag rules are informational only. Freckleton's done absolutely nothing wrong. He's run his line. It's just the luck of the draw that Olsen and Blocker have lost 2 seconds almost to Constantini.
Absolutely, and let's give full props as well to Freckleton to make it into what is one of our most competitive Indy 500 fields across all of sim racing, Will. There's so much work that goes into the setup and so much planning that gets done for months and months and months. Freckleton has made the field now twice in a row. Good for him, and struggling a little bit on the race pace, but still in contention for a good top 20 finish though. Look at Olsen though, gap back down to 1.6 seconds as he tries to reel back the Italian out front. The traffic has helped Costantini, but Olsen and Blocker both have very good cars in dirty air. Can they close the gap now?
Yeah, indeed. As 1.6 seconds is the gap now. So They've got it down, and again, if they work together the same way that you saw at the start of the race, it's possible. But Olsen actually is closing already. He's closed half a second in the space of about a lap and a half. So Olsen must have incredible, absolutely incredible solo car pace. I don't know what it is that he's got on his car. I'm just going to see if he's got a RaceSpotTV sticker on there to make him 2 tenths of a second faster. But I mean, that's absolutely incredible, that last lap. A 41.2 to a 41.5 there. I'm just checking as well with Constantini to see whether he's got any traffic around him, and he hasn't. He's catching traffic, but he had no traffic around him, Aaron.
Well, with the aero screen now, the aero wash is about 2 seconds behind. So really, if you're in the same corner as the car in front, you are going to get some of that chop. And 3 laps ago, Constantini ran a 41.1. Now he's in the 41.4 bracket. So the dirty air once again is playing a factor. And as we start lapping more and more cars, it's going to become more and more difficult to overtake them as you get to better cars and cars that aren't going to want to be 1 lap down. This is going to really dictate. We have 62 to go. If you can stretch 1 lap of fuel, you may think about short pitting here to try to get out of this dirty air.
Yeah. Kinetic Racing's Daniel Johnson started 33rd, and he is currently running the last driver on the lead lap in 20th place. Just to let you know, Andrew Wood has disappeared from our timing and scoring screens in the number 64 car. So it's out of the race. We don't know why yet. We will try to find out when we have the opportunity, but we're going to keep it right now with Michele Constantini because of the fact that he's trying to get around lap traffic. This time, as I said, it is Daniel Johnson in the number 49 car, Kinetic Racing, and Constantini will have the inside line in towards turn number 1. Gets the move done nicely. Now, if you're Johnson, you just got to remember to lift it a little bit there through turn number 1 because now you're in dirty air. For some of these drivers as well, Arjuna, they've not been in dirty air for maybe 20, 30 laps. So them all of a sudden having a driver immediately ahead of them will mess up their handling.
Yeah, and I think Andrew Kinsella has just decided to come down pit lane, try and maybe avoid some of that traffic as you see more cars following him down as well. This traffic is going to, I always say this in endurance races, Will, the traffic giveth and the traffic taketh. Right now, Olsen gained a bit of time that last time around and going to be aided as well as that kinetic car dives onto the lane. So the gap between first, second, and third still 1.5 seconds.
There's a psychological thing there as well with Johnson coming on towards pit road because whilst you're on the lead lap, if a caution comes out, then great, you're on the lead lap. You can bunch up. As soon as you go a lap down, then it's a different mindset. So I think there for Johnson, because of the fact that he recognizes he's now 1 lap down, the risk-reward factor of coming into the pits is actually a little bit better. Noting also that that pit stop means he won't go 2 laps down. So if there is a caution, he could still get the wave around. And that,
Constantini!
Oh my word!
Oh my word,
That's going to be the race for him.
That car's not handling properly.
That's communication there, Will. That's why I said you want to pit a lap early. You don't want to pit with other cars. You don't especially want to pit with the people in the back because they aren't going to be pushing as much. Constantini, mistimed pit stop.
That car is, for all intents and purposes, going to be struggling now for the rest of this race. And again, he's on pit road. Yeah, that's a long pit stop then. My word. Hugo Olsen out of pit road, no issues for him. But Michele Constantini then, this is what we talk, and again, you talk about the traffic give, the traffic take of the way though, Arjuna. That was a very aggressive pit entry. Yes, the cars a lap down were coming slowly on towards pit road. And yes, you might have lost yourself 2 seconds. But trying to dive down the inside, right next to the attenuator. Risk-reward factor, 57 laps of the race still to go. 1 more pit stop to go still. You could have just backed up and come in single file. I'm sorry.
you know what Michele has just done, Will? Thrown away his chance of becoming a back-to-back champion. We'll watch it one more time. Commits very late on the entry to the pit road as well. Tries to squeeze it in between the attenuator. Never going to happen here, unfortunately, for Costantini. And, well, Power Slide teammates Blocker and Olsen now in a prime position, Will, to take home their first broadcasted 500 win.
He might get a penalty for two different reasons there. Number one, I mean, the driver on pit road in that normal would have had absolutely no way, and I mean no way, Aaron, of knowing that Costantini was coming in hot behind him. There was no warning given. He wasn't running kind of in the pit lane, you know, trying to get alongside. That was a dive straight down the middle. Secondly, the way the pit rules work is you're only allowed to basically come onto the pit lane where the works are done side of things. 3 stalls before, 3 stalls afterwards. That could be 2 penalties for Costantini, who is back out on track, who is in 18th place right now. Well, after a 49.4 second pit stop, and I'm having a look at his speeds, they look presentable but not fast.
And it does look race control is calling him back into the pits for that, and that his car was very unstable on pit entry, so black flagged and car damaged what could have been. This is going to be, every driver has races that they think about the one that got away. For Costantini here today, that's going to be this race.
I like the fact that we've basically called every penalty and almost everything in this race happening perfect. It's almost as if we've done this before, Arjuna.
It really is like that. I mean, Will, you're on an incredible run of 500-mile races here at the Brick Card. 11 of the official iRacing Indy 500s, and when we were talking a few days ago, it was what? Almost 25, 26, something like that in terms of 500-mile races. You've seen basically everything that can happen here at the Speedway, but still, a big shock there with Michele making that mistake. And wow, right now Olsen in the prime position, 3 seconds in front of his teammate, Pavelski only 1.5 seconds behind Blocker, getting dragged in to the fight now.
Blocker, Pavelski have both won 500-mile races before. Olsen haven't. And I say 500-mile race, by the way, you mean either the open wheel 500, which Costantini won last year, or an iRacing Indianapolis 500-mile race. Olsen has not in that number 39 car. He leads the race by 3 seconds right now. And Aaron, you and I have commentated, what, 8 of these together? iRacing Indy 500s, I think, at this stage right now. We've seen almost everything. I haven't seen a driver waste away their race by such an aggressive move on towards pit road. I'm going through, I've watched it about 10 times now on my own monitor. I don't understand. I mean, I know that when you basically start braking to come on towards pit road, we're going to get a little bit technical here. Once you start braking, it is difficult to roll off the throttle and change direction, etc. You basically have one way in because you are coming from about 217 miles an hour down to 55. But at that point as well, you either go around again or you just slow down a little bit more, you follow the car onto pit road. Trying to go down the middle, I don't understand why anyone would try and do that.
I don't, as he came in, I don't think that was his intentions. One of the 2 cars in front of him did say they were pitting in. When you're driving at really a world caliber pace and you're used to cutting the right at 55 miles an hour at the cones, when you're used to that, you're assuming everybody else is going to be at that level that you are driving at. That may have been just a complete misjudgment that those drivers who were at the tail end of the lead lap, what are they going to gain by saving half a second or a second coming into the pits? They're not at that same competition level at that moment in the race. So I think Costantini was just thinking that they were going to brake where he was going to brake, and it didn't play out that way.
I'm sorry, but I mean, IT tech support and race car drivers, they have something in common sometimes. Expect everyone else around you to do the unexpected. It's one of those things. Because sometimes, yeah, you were doing your normal line, but I'm sorry, if you're on a motorway, you're driving at 70 miles an hour and there's someone ahead of you doing 60 miles an hour, you slow down to 60 miles an hour. You don't just run into the driver behind. And I know how frustrating it is. On the other side, the Apex Racing team stroke IFIG broken error car. I mean, Michele Constantini must be absolutely distraught right now. I will give him that, Arjuna. And again, if that was a 0.2 second reaction moment we're talking about here. And we are talking about, you know, esports drivers, sim racers who have got to make these tough decisions. And I did talk earlier on about Hugo Olsen being very conservative on towards pit road. And in that case, Hugo Olsen lost a second, but he's currently leading the race. Just because you're taking your normal line doesn't necessarily mean everyone else around you is as confident coming on towards pit road. Had that have been Constantini and Olsen coming on towards pit road, Olsen being demonstrably almost a second slower on that pit entry, pit exit, we could have had the same situation if all you're going to do is just take your line on towards pit road and your braking point.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Will. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not on the lapped cars to see the leaders coming and get out of the way, especially on the entrance in towards pit road, where safety is meant to be of paramount importance. Constantini just makes that mistake. An update from the i5G team, Will, in our YouTube chat. He didn't have fuel for another lap, didn't expect those cars to be going so slow, tried to use his normal braking point. I think just unfortunately, if Silva had been slightly more to the left, it may have left the space for Constantini to squeeze his way in, and that Apex team car would still be towards the front of the field. But unfortunately for Constantini, now running around 3 laps down, back in 22nd place, not going to be defending his title this time around.
And you make a fun point there as well. Had the lap down car been a car length to the left, we'd have been calling that as one of the craziest entrances onto pit road we've ever seen. We'd have been lauding Michele, we'd have been saying, oh my god, this is so great, put it in the iRacing top 10. But that's what the difference of a car whips sometimes makes in motorsports. And Aaron, of course, you've seen that in terms of your flagging days, in terms of seeing so much action on track. The difference between a hero and us talking about things for the wrong reasons can be the space of a meter, a foot, even less sometimes.
That is the difference between the top 10 and not top 10. Is that just inches? But I think that was lap 61 coming to 60 that happened. I said, why didn't he come in a lap earlier? For him to win this race, he couldn't have, or he would have been 1 lap short on fuel. The way they were running, he had to pit that lap. He had to run it all the way to the end. So sometimes strategy can box you into a point that you don't want to be in. And so sometimes we can be talking about an inch, a foot on track, and then sometimes we can be talking about ounces of fuel.
I will give him credit. Number 66 car is still running in the race, so he hasn't done what some other sim racers I've seen do over the years. Take their toys, throw them out the pram, and just give up. Constantini is still running. He's in 22nd place on track, albeit he is 3 laps down. Of course, there has been, in the annals of the Indy 500, it's Jacques Villeneuve coming back from a couple of laps down. You know, crazier things have happened, but everything needs to go in one direction. And it would be the ultimate of all ultimate comebacks from this stage of the race. And just to let you know, his lap times as well. 40.9, so he's still kind of on pace as well. Let's run for yourself, shall we, through your top 8, as we have kind of taken our focus away for the time being from your lead battles. But here it is. You got Awesome leads by 3 seconds over Adam Blocker. Blocker has closed in a little bit, but the gap remains at about 3 seconds. Matt Pavelski runs in 3rd place with AJ Burton, the quiet character. We haven't really talked about him all race long, but he runs in P number 4. Wilson Nato, he was running high early on. Then after the first round of green flag pit stops, he really has started to fall down in this race. He runs in P number 5. P6 is Brandon Lichtenberg. He is a sleeper agent. He really knows his way around this racetrack. He runs in P number 6. If there's a caution, expect him to start moving forward. And then you got Andrew Kinsella in P number 7. He is currently 17 seconds behind your race leader in the number 4 car. And then Christopher, the highest mover of the day, started on the outside of row number 10. And now he runs in P number 8. And he is currently 17.5 seconds behind your leader. There's a look at the moves and shakers. Note Burton, note Kinsella, note Stouffer, and even note Espati as well. Up at least a dozen places each in this race. Some of it, yes, will be down to the fact there has been some attrition. I say the word some, there's still 23 drivers running in this event right now. Joshua Chim having an extended pit stop after hitting the wall and getting some side pod damage earlier on in this race. So there's a lot of people who have worked their way up through the field. Interesting point to note there, are only over World Championship driver Arjuna down 5 places in this race.
Yeah, Challoner has not had the easiest run of things so far, Will. That car, I mentioned it at the top, Team Talent not necessarily the most confident in their race setup coming into this. Challoner set a very, very impressive qualifying time, especially given that he didn't do too much running in the build-up to the qualifying sessions, but sitting in 10th and, like you say, not being the most impressive day for Challoner. Challoner has had some very, very strong performances in that eNASCAR Coca-Cola Series, Will. And to be on the edge of the top 10, you mentioned wanting to see a bit more out of Challoner here in an Indy 500. This might be one of his final opportunities, not going the way he would have wanted.
Yeah, indeed so. Of course, heading over to work in, it is still technically Massachusetts. I don't know if it's in Massachusetts or New Hampshire, but it's close enough. They moved the offices a year ago and a couple of days in 2019, so they moved away from the office in Bedford where they've been for so many years since they set the company up. They moved it about 30 miles or so up the road, and that was about a year ago they moved. And of course, the amazing iRacing studio I got put in as a part of that. Let's look then. Gaps come down through traffic there. We're kind of into that second half of the run, and lap traffic is again playing havoc for this lead battle. We just saw Hugo Olsen lose about 1.5 seconds there, Aaron, but now Block is coming up behind the traffic. Some of that's been given back to Hugo Olsen.
Yeah, the lap cars have been doing, I don't want to say a better job because it's not their responsibility to get out of the way, but they didn't make life miserable for Hugo, and the same thing for Blocker. So looking at the gap here, 2.27, about the same. No real net gain or loss there. If Blocker wants to win this race, though, we are about 9 laps away from the final round of pit stops. You've been working this entire race for this moment. We saw in the previous stop a race thrown away. One of the top 3 could win it or lose it again here in about 9 laps.
So the track temperature went up to about 54 degrees Celsius about 10 minutes ago. It's dipped back to 50 degrees. The air temperature is 26.8 degrees, which is about what we'd normally expect for the month of May. I mean, I've been there when it's been humid. The first year I went, which is 2013, incredibly humid year that year. And then I've seen it when it's been colder. I've seen it through the 100th running of the Indy 500. Probably the warmest Indy 500 we've ever had, Aaron. So many people, almost me included, getting heat stroke that day. I'd have hated to have been in the snake pit that year. But 26.8 degrees Celsius, that's about what we'd be used to in the month of May on a normal running of the 500.
And the past 10 years traditionally have been hot. I remember being in the stands in 92. Wind chill was floating around 35 to 38 degrees. Oof. That year was absolutely miserable in the stands. I remember just you couldn't stop shaking. It was so cold. My dad kept looking at me saying, why are we here? But I was seated right above the finish line because I wanted to watch the flagman of all things. But of course, closest finish in 92, Al Unser Jr. over Scott Goodyear. But past 10 years traditionally have been just brutally hot. And you're right, heat stroke with heat exhaustion has been a thing to fight off. So bring water, obviously, although snake pit, I don't know if people are really considering that.
Arjuna.
Look at those gaps, Will. Top left portion of your screen. Blocker now within 2 seconds of his teammate. The 74 reeling in. Olsen out front. Pavelski, by the way, in the 75 has lost a whole heap of time. 7.5 seconds behind in the traffic. Right now, Will, 36 laps to go. One more stop. It's looking like Olsen versus Blocker if we stay green. I do have a question for you, though, Aaron. You were obviously at what was a very unique Indy 500 this year. No real fans in attendance, not being run in the month of May. What was the environment like? It was a much colder Indy 500 as well. I have to assume that it must have been a very subdued environment compared to, the traditional festivities that surround the Indy 500.
It was bittersweet. It was so bizarre to have all the cars lined up on the straightaway. Of course, I worked my first Indy 500 this year, so I've been in the stands since '97, or that's my streak. But it was, I didn't know what to do when Jim Corneliuson sang "Back Home Again" in Indiana without the Purdue band. It was all the memories from the previous 500s came flooding in, but yet at the same time, it was just such a resemblance of the world we're currently living in. I was so grateful to be a part of it. I was so grateful that the millions of fans at home got to watch it, but at the same time, my heart broke for those people that had 50, 60 straight years. But it is 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed pretty much everything we know, but the emotions were there. I did shed my normal tear as "Back Home Again" in Indiana was sung, and even more so for achieving my life dream of being in the flag stand for the race. But oh my goodness, my heart was breaking for the hundreds of thousands that couldn't be there.
2 points. Real men cry during "Back Home Again" in Indiana. And number two, there was at least one fan, the guy in the tree, of course, who made international news, getting himself the only probably vantage viewpoint. I do want to ask another question, but I do want to focus quickly on battle going on just at the rear end of your top 10 quickly. Jason Brophy, Christian Challoner, and Austin Espartee. They're battling it out right now for 9, 10, 11 on track. So this is the last of your top 10. Austin Espartee got himself to around P number 11 and then kind of stalled out Arjuna because he had such a good first half of the race, but it's just been that second half of this long green flag run. He's not been able to gain any further momentum.
Well, one factor that's been an issue here for guys like him has been that lap traffic. You see right now he's tucked up right behind Adam Crane, who's lying in 18th place. But what a performance from Espartee to be able to get that car all the way from the back of your field up in towards the top of the top 10, Will. Because, I mean, it's so much work to do. Stouffer as well has done a great job to get that car up into 8th place. And, you were mentioning the RaceSpotTV logo. Well, Espartee doesn't necessarily have a big RaceSpot logo. What he has instead is series organizer Tanner Watkins on the side powering him down the back straightaway right now.
Yep, the Tanner face car in the number 7 Austin Espartee machine, driving for Team Talent. And so then we've talked about Team Talent not necessarily feeling as comfortable as i5G or Powerslide Motorsports in terms of their race setup, but you have to say they've held their own in this race. And sometimes having a setup that is maybe a little bit more conservative but runs well and is adaptable, that gets you to this point where you've got one fuel run to go. Because from here on in, there is one more pit stop needed and you are good to go to the end of the race. But meanwhile, Adam Blocker is on a charge right now in that number 74 Powerslide Motorsports car. It is a Powerslide Motorsports 1, Powerslide Motorsports 2. The thing is here, Aaron, if Blocker catches Olsen, work together for maybe the next 20 laps, then fight it out?
No. If you wait to the end of the run, are you going to be able to make the move? The first 15 laps are going to be vital. We'll see if our leader comes in here. The fuel window is open. He has Simon Brandt, the 13th place runner, in front of him. I am shocked that Olsen didn't pit because he is losing a lot of time behind the lap car, who's about 1 second in front of him. This is allowing Blocker to reel him in. Lead now under 1 second. You got to pit this time. The pit window is open with 29 laps to go.
Pavelski's in, Burton's in, NATO's in, Lichtenberg is in. I would say if you're, the thing is, if you're Olsen and you come in, Blocker will cover you off instantaneously. That's the way it's going to work. Actually, it's Blocker who needs to be the one to try and come in a bit earlier, and that's exactly what I meant. Olsen comes in, Blocker comes in immediately behind. Play the same strategy. If Blocker had come in a lap earlier, Arjuna, then it might have been Olsen who would have been hung out to dry. It's also worth noting, had one stayed out for 2 laps longer, yes, you would have maybe gained a second on pit road, probably would have lost more staying out on track with the tyres, and also the lap traffic.
Yeah, and let's see what the pit stop time is going to be this time around. Blocker has been slightly shorter every time, and he's going to drop off the jacks first, trying to roll off. Oh, that was close. Olsen has now got a real fight on his hands here, Will. 28 laps to go. This is going to come down all the way to the wire.
Looks as though that they did an almost full pit stop there, 9.2, 9.3, so a couple of laps less in terms of fuel. Hopefully that's been timed to the 10th of a litre. And they come out in traffic. So, but the good thing is for them this time around, actually, no, that's not traffic. No, it is traffic. That's Liam Quinn. Liam Quinn, who, don't forget, has got that side pod damage. So getting out the way here for him, Arjun, is going to be a little bit more difficult than other drivers.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. If these two guys are going to catch him in the middle of the corner, that reduced apex speed is going to compromise them. But down the straight, Quinn is compromised himself. Here comes Olsen into turn 1, also with brand new tires. He's going to peek to the inside, but not able to get the move. This is holding the 2 leaders up.
Yep, into turn 2. And they're both going to go through. I was a little bit worried there for just half a moment about Liam Quinn in the Team Talent car. But Liam Quinn, even with that side pod damage, was able to run the outside line well and was able to just allow both those drivers to go past. And in fact, now he comes on towards pit road. Jason Brophy and Christian Challenger Challenger's just come on towards pit road in the 78 machine. So now it's just Jason Brophy who has not yet pitted for the final time in terms of your top 10. And the Team Misfit Racing number 88 car cycles through to your race lead. And we have now got ourselves 26 laps worth of racing to go in the 2020 Open Wheels 500-mile race, presented by Mitchell Transmissions. And we're just having a look through. Challenger's coming out of pit road, and Brophy is coming in nicely there on towards pit road. And if this was a really close fight, and you had 5 or 6 drivers all in a small pack here, Aaron, I would have expected to maybe have seen a speeding penalty. I think because there's only 2 drivers at the front who came at the same time, then 4 drivers who are quite a way back in a group-ish together, they were a little bit more conservative than they might have been had we have had 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 drivers all within 5 seconds of each other.
Absolutely. You talk about the risk-reward. Blocker was within that 1 second, and now the draft is good for 2 seconds. So there is no way Olsen was going to pull 1.5 seconds on Blocker coming in, and Blocker was within that window, so he didn't need to push it. So that was good for both of them that they didn't have to push, because the race right now is between Blocker and Olsen, and they could have only lost it in the pits, not won it.
Yeah, indeed. And Arjuna, with less than 25 laps to go of this race, what do the drivers now need to do? In particular, AJ Burton, because he's in a battle with Wilson Nato, who's starting to move back forward in a battle for P4.
Yeah, this is the final sprint to the end. Not just this battle up on your screen that we're watching right now. Kinsella is in a battle with Lichtenberg and his teammate Stouffer. So final 24 laps of the race. Everyone just scrambling to try and get as far forward as they can. But meanwhile, it's just a 2-horse race right now for this race win. The only thing that's going to bring other drivers into this battle, Will, is another caution. Otherwise, for Powerslide Motorsports, who's it going to be? Blocker or Olsen? All depends on who's going to be out front before those tires start to wear.
Indeed, absolutely correct. And just to run through then, show you your top 8 with less than 25 laps of this race to go. It is Adam Blocker leading over Hugo Olsen. They are realistically, barring a caution, in this battle for the win of the event. Matt Pavelski runs in 3rd place. Number 75 car, he is the first of the i5G drivers in the field after, of course, Michele Constantini had that moment on pit road earlier on today. AJ Burton runs in 4th place with Wilson Nato in 5th, Andrew Kinsella in 6th place, Brandon Lichtenberg in 7th, and Chris Stouffer rounds out your top 8. A total of 4 cautions here today, 2 long green flag runs, of which this is by far the longest Arjuna, and with 22 laps to go, the top 2 in the field, they're just thinking, please, no caution. They do not want a caution. They do not want the field bunched back up.
Yeah, Powerslide Motorsports and the entire strategy department knocking on wood right now as Alston's going to sweep back in towards the race lead. 21 laps to go here, Will. We only had 2 cautions in the entirety of the 2019 race. We've already had 5 so far, and, well, I'm really hoping here that we get a great dramatic finish to this race. No cautions, just all about strategy and which one wants it more, Olsen or Blocker. 2 teammates running very similar setups. It's all down to the driver now and how they choose to approach this.
Andrew Kinsella, Brandon Lichtenberg scrapping it out for P number 6 on track. Kinsella runs in P number 7, and then you've got Brandon Lichtenberg just ahead of him on track. And it's another i5G versus Powerslide Motorsports battle going on right now. And it looks like Lichtenberg did get the place done last lap, and it's been able to pull out a little bit. I'm wondering whether is Kinsella fuel saving or is just Kinsella just slower right now on track, Aaron? Because it was mighty close coming down in towards turn number 1, but Lichtenberg just seems to have rocketed away.
Kinsella out of 4 looked to be washing up the track. I think he's struggling for front end grip right now, way on the outside in 1. So I think that car does not like dirty air. He's trying to get clean air on the front end of that car. So I think right now it may just be a combination between track conditions and the marbles. His car is just not liking the surface of this track right now.
Yeah, and in terms of other battles, AJ Burton versus Wilson Nato for P number 4. Well, surprise, surprise, that's another. Actually, no, it's not. It's an Interlagos Motorsports versus i5G. And as they come down towards turn number 1 again, Wilson Nato in that number 80 Interlagos Motorsports car, hoping to get himself closer to those guys ahead of him. But it's 7 seconds between himself and Matt Pavelski. So now, at this stage of the race, Aaron, you fight the battle you've got. You almost, it sounds really bad, you have to stop thinking about the victory at this stage. You fight the battle you've got, you run the race you've been given.
Oh, exactly. What reason why we're seeing the battles 4th and 5th and 7th and 8th fight so hard is should we get that yellow, every position up is going to be closer, well, speaking the obvious here, but closer to the front. And the odd thing is, Will, with this setup, the closer you are to the front of the car, the draft is good, but in the corner, the dirty air isn't as much. When you get to about that half second back, that's when the gain down the straightaway really is negated by the struggles in the corner. So 3rd, 4th, 5th, every position right now, absolutely critical. Should we get that yellow now? 17 laps to go. Time is running out for that, but we saw professionals such as Chen hit the wall in mid-run, and the track is just getting more and more treacherous with each lap under green.
Yeah, and that offline reminds you about a certain Grand Prix that happened earlier on today. Online, the grip's all there. It's been rubbing in so much. You can see that black line all the way around the racetrack. In fact, it's grippier there. It's faster there than it was at the start of the race. You got a meter offline right now, as you just see this wonderful camera angle past the Yard of Bricks. Thank you very much, as ever, to Istvan Bala, TrackCams22.com, for the incredible track camera angles that you've been seeing all day long. But in terms of you going offline into the marbles, it's just getting worse and worse. And this is the reason why two-wide racing at the end of this race, and the point that Aaron made between Olsen and Blocker, which is now literally nose to tail, if you don't make the move with maybe 5 to go, you might be asked to just give it up a little bit. But Arjuna, you're talking about underfilling and short filling. You got a story for us.
Oh boy, do I have a story for you, Will, and I think you both might enjoy this one. I was running in a separate 500-mile race a few months ago after the iRacing Indy 500, and coming out of that final fuel stop, I got my fuel number slightly wrong, a total mistake on my part, but I managed to save that car, save a lot of fuel to make it all the way out of turn number 4 on the final lap. My engine starts to splutter. I hold my line, and none other than Adrian Fernandez, IndyCar legend, comes and hits me from behind because, well, when you start spluttering in these cars, Will, you go nowhere. It's not like other cars where sometimes you might pick up a little bit of speed now and then. In these cars, once you're out of fuel, you are done. So hopefully, we talked about Kinsella saving a bit of fuel. Hopefully none of those drivers, or none of these drivers rather, have made that mistake coming into just 14 laps to go.
Of course, Fernandez was a part of the 1996 US 500, which had quite possibly the most farcical start ever in terms of 500-mile race history. When, you know, the split happened that destroyed open wheel racing forever. Thanks very much. But yeah, that was a fun one. Back at Michigan, back in 1996. But in terms of this race, 14 laps to go. We're getting to the witching hour. We're getting to the point when things really are going to pick up, and it is still a 2-horse race. In terms of what will happen if a caution with 5 laps to go will pretty much end this race. And that is the number that both Olsen and Blocker will be thinking about, Arjuna, because they know that a caution with 5 to go, they will be the victor. In terms of iRacing Indy 500 history, I say we've had pretty much green flag running in the entire history of that to the line. Controversial, some people called it this year, when Takuma Sato won his second Indianapolis 500. But as I said before, 500 miles is 500 miles for a reason.
I mean, as it should be, Will. But, I mean, in the history of the Open Wheels 500, last year Costantini won under caution, so it's not happened in official iRacing top split history, but history in this event might lead to one more caution. I think right now, though, Will, Blocker is starting to struggle, almost getting up into the wall in the short chute there. That dirty air is starting to affect his car more than he'd like. Those tires aren't so healthy. 16 laps into the run, 12 laps to go. Olsen looking very, very good now.
I wonder if we can get a replay of that, because through turn number 1, it looked as though that he just put a little bit too much weight jacker in there, Arrow. More than he would have wanted to, because normally you go for a sequence. So every 4 or 5 laps, you add a bit of weight jacker or you change the bars around a little bit. But it looked to be like he tried to get a little bit too aggressive with the weight jacker down in towards turn number 1. The back end of that car just started sliding out on him.
And you can't blame him for trying. Gliding through turn one, obviously very, very treacherous. It seems to be the trickiest corner. That some people say every corner here is identical.
Nope.
Absolutely not. Each corner has its own quirks, and turn 1 is the point where I expect if somebody's going to have issues right now, it is going to be there. That's where you're going to be the most aggressive on the weight jacker. And if you go one click too much, that rear end can come around on you in a hurry.
Yeah, and the thing is about turn number 1, it's when the changes, where you first really start feeling them, is in towards turn number 1. And that one, you can see he wasn't down to the white line that time around. On that replay, what we just saw, Arjuna, you could see that he had 2-3 stabs in towards turn number 1 in order to get the car settled. That car doesn't feel that settled right now. And I'm hoping that when we get down to turn number 1 on board of Olsen, I want to see the steering wheel angle from him, because I'm sure he's not having to do a treble stab in towards turn number 1. And the treble stab really is a kind of a race car that isn't handling the way you want it to, shall we say.
Yeah, let's take a look then into turn number 1. Olsen does have the benefit of clean air, but they are coming up on traffic. Much smoother down into 1, not getting below the white line. Let's see what happens in turn number 2. Is the car handling a little bit better? This time he is able to get below the white line, so car handles a little bit better maybe in turn 2 compared to turn 1. And of course, Will, 9 laps to go. We must say all 4 corners here are very, very different. They drive differently. They require slightly different inputs, slightly different car inputs in terms of your ARBs and weight jacker as well. Olsen almost gets up into the wall there to turn number 3. Oh, this is going to be a close one all the way till the end.
Pressure is starting to pick up, and I think the internal pressure for Hugo Olsen as well. The other drivers, there isn't a podium at Indianapolis. It's 1 driver. But if there were to be a podium, the other 2 on the podium, Blocker and Pavelski, have both won a 500-mile race in the iRacing category previously. They have both won an iRacing Indy 500. Olsen has neither won the Open Wheels 500-mile race or an iRacing Indy 500. So for him, that car that started off all beautiful and yellow, now speckled with bits of rubber and dirt, he knows that he's, you know, about 20 miles away from cementing himself among the IndyCar iRacing great in this virtual community. But there's still a lot of racing to come. There's still a lot of racing to come here. I do have to apologize. Blocker has come close. He's come second place before. I remember the call now actually in my head. It got played so many times. He's come second, but he hasn't actually won a race. So Blocker actually has about as much of a need to win a 500-mile race as Olsen does as well. So between the two of them, it seems to be that Olsen, if he can get past this traffic, Aaron, that's the thing, and he is past that traffic. That, I think, might just be the last major hurdle for him. I'm just having a look to see. There is a bit more traffic. I see at least one driver down in towards turn number 1 who he needs to get past. When we get past that driver, he should be home safe.
Blocker, if he wants to win, he has to put the pressure on. These drivers have now been racing for 2 hours, 40 minutes. When you're going for a win at this stage, your heart's pumping, you have adrenaline, got to put the pressure on. Make that adrenaline pump a little bit more. It's very easy to make a mistake right now, lose that concentration, try too hard. Right now, you just have to keep running what you've done the past 2.5 hours, but now you're breathing heavy, your heart rate's up, your adrenaline is going. It is very hard to keep those emotions in check. As Olsen gets on the flat in 1, you don't want to do that too many times, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Blocker needs to be a little bit closer to put that pressure on.
Yeah, and I think, though, for Blocker, his tyres, his balance has just gone to put, shall we say. I will say, by the way, the O2 car of Matt Hollenberg basically just said, you know what, guys, I am not going to be a factor at the end of this race.
I just heard a car spinning, guys. Is there something that's just happened out on track?
Jesper Orman almost looped it in turn 4. He got on the flat. An incredible save to keep this race green. So Olsen and Blocker for this one too need to send Jesper Orman a Christmas card for not looping that car.
But a caution now would end it anyway. But yeah, you're right. I'm just having a look at the replay here up on your screen. In towards turn number 4. You can see the puff of smoke. He got onto the flat. The car started over-rotating on him, but was able to catch it, and he's running it down his heart rate must be up by about 60 right now, but he's running it down on the access road through turn number 3 and 4 because of the fact, again, the leaders are going past him. So massive amounts of respect going on here between lap-down drivers and those who are battling for the victory. A caution now will end the race. 7.5 miles of racing to go here at Indianapolis in the 2020 Open Wheels 500-mile race. Our race coverage today has been presented by the Majors Garage, and our journey for now for Olsen, he's basically got himself 10 corners to go.
Just 5 miles to go, and I cannot imagine how the Powerslide crew is feeling right now. I've just checked our Discord, Will. There's about 9 people sitting in voice chat right now, ready to celebrate. Olsen or Blocker, it doesn't matter. It's been a long wait for Powerslide Motorsports to finally get a broadcasted 500-mile race win, and we're just moments away. I can feel the tears, Will, about to form in my eyes. This is so emotional, and I can't believe I'm finally witnessing this. So out of turn number 4 then, Hugo Olsen takes the win for Powerslide Motorsports, their first ever broadcasted 500-mile race win, and the teammate Adam Blocker in second. What a day and what a result for the Powerslide Motorsports crew, and like I said, tears starting to form in my eyes. Will, oh, you can just talk about how much this race win means to some of these teams.
Indeed, so yeah. Back in 2012, Young O became the first Scandinavian driver to win an iRacing Indianapolis 500. In 2020, Hugo Olsen becomes the second Scandinavian driver to win a 500-mile broadcasted Indy 500-mile race, a 500-mile race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Adam Blocker comes home in second place after a determined drive. And by the way, what an incredible long green flag run we had to the end of that one. 4 cautions here today, but then the second half of the race, we're pretty much entirely caution free. And that really did separate the good drivers from the great drivers. And after falling in the shadows for so long behind I5G today, it is all about Powerslide Motorsports claiming themselves a 1-2 finish here. And it's a team formation down past the yard of bricks and Aram. For Powerslide Motorsports, this win isn't just a individual victory. As I believe Michael Andretti once said, that when he got his first victory as a team owner, that was as important as winning it if he was to have won it by himself.
I just can't imagine with 30 to go what the emotions were like, because so often, Will, in these 500-mile races that we've seen, when we have a dominant car inside 50, 40, 30 to go, or in this event, a team, you're wondering what is going to happen to mess this up. It's ours. We have this race. What is going to happen? And today, that what if did not happen. An absolute just throwdown victory. First to third, 15.4 seconds. So Olsen and Blocker absolutely put on a show here today. And as mentioned, I can't imagine the emotions of that team right now.
Yeah, indeed. So, and it's the victory lap then for the Powerslide team as they work themselves down towards turn number 3 on track right now. And of course, the north end of the racetrack where the Snake Pit would normally be. Who knows, with the Snake Pit will be back, of course, in 2021. But incredible victory, an incredible day. Just to let you know, in terms of those who finished the race, we had our total of 22 drivers. Marco Brazil was a driver who did actually, at one point of the race, lead after the unconventional strategy. He then had an incident just after a restart that gave him a penalty, finished themselves 2 laps down, 5 laps down actually, in the race at the end. Michele Constantini led a number of laps here today. However, he unfortunately had that pit entry issue that we talked about so intensively about, and he finished 3 laps down. And yeah, what a time for the lead on your headset that's lasted so well for so long, just to give up for a moment there on the last lap of the race. Great job. Thanks, Sennheiser. But the donuts going on right now. The donuts are going on for Hugo Olsen in that number 39 car. And he just tags the wall for good measure. That's all right. It'll help the car rotate a little bit more as well. And with that all said and done, let's have a look then at your final race results here from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the 2020 Open Wheels 500-mile race presented by Mitchell Transmissions. And it's Hugo Olsen, the Scandinavian driver, becoming the second ever Scandinavian driver to win a 500-mile race at Indianapolis, winning by 1.8 seconds over his teammate, number 74 car of Adam Blocker. Matt Pavelski in the Broken Arrow with i5G and Apex Racing Team car comes home in 3rd place after being there or thereabouts pretty much all day long. Wilson Nato in the Interlagos Motorsports number 80 car. Well, he was running up front at the very start of this race, but he kind of fell back under the first green flag run, and the balance of his race car didn't seem to adapt to the changing conditions, but he still comes home fourth after gaining positions later on in the race. AJ Burton for I5G with Apex Racing Team and Broken Arrow comes home P number 5. In many ways, he drove a bit of a lonely race for most of the day, but he was able to work himself through the field, coming home in that 5th place just ahead of his teammate, the number 10 car of Brandon Lichtenberg. Andrew Kinsella for Powerslide Motorsports comes home in P number 7 behind the biggest mover of the days today. That was Chris Stouffer, who started in P number 30 and ended up finishing all the way up in P number 8. Christian Challoner, the NASCAR World Championship driver for 2020, well, he had a good run at Indy, but 9th place is all he can manage, but here's the highest place team talent car, and he was just ahead of his teammate, Jason Brophy, who comes home 38 seconds behind Hugo Olsen. Austin Espartee rounds out a trio of team talent cars and also has the distinction of being the last driver to finish on the lead lap. Jesper Orman in the Three Crowns Racing number 87 car, the first driver to finish 1 lap down, and then Simon Bryant in the number 22 Sadie Sim Autosports car comes home in 13th place. Liam Quinn for Team Talent had himself a little glance at the wall about midway through the race that gave him some terminal suspension damage and side pod damage, and that basically meant from then on in he was always going to be a bit of a non-factor, but he managed to get that car home and comes home in P number 14 and then in P15, the only ludicrous speed car to finish the race out of their trio of entries was Chris Cahill. The other 2 drivers for that team, Tim Doyle and Young O, both out in the first 60% of the race. Now McBride finishes in P number 16 with a Team Talent number 41 car, a victim of what that team called a difficult day in terms of setup and adapting to the race. And then our independent driver, Dylan Freckleton, in the number 313 car, comes home in P number 17, the first driver 2 laps down. Adam Crane did lead a lap in the number 34 Satellite Racing car, but unfortunately comes home 2 laps down. A late race speeding penalty, we believe, is what contributed to that one. And then Matt Hollenberg in the All-American iRacers car coming home 19th. And then in 20th place, you have Michele Constantini, who, as we talked about, was on shout to be there in that battle. But unfortunately, well, he had that pit entry, didn't he? Oliver Silva comes home in 21st place for Three Crowns Racing, 3 laps down. And then Marco Brazil, as I say, he did the alternate strategy early on after our second caution of the day. And then basically got himself into a position where he was on the inside into turn number 2. He had Christopher Demerit on the outside. The 2 came together. Brazil and Demerit, who had high hopes for this race, well, they don't need to sing any Panic at the Disco songs here today. Daniel Johnson, P number 23 for Kinetic Racing, out of the race. Although technically he did complete 90% of the laps. And then Andrew Wood and Team Talent out 63 laps down. Joshua Chin had impact with the wall. Suspension damage put him out of the event in the Team Chimera Team Talent car. Logan Simmons, the iconic Motorsports number 21 machine, out of the race, 117 laps down. We've already talked about Christopher Demerit and the incident he had with Marco Brazil. We talked to him earlier on as well. He finishes P number 27. We also talked to Dakota DeCenzo in the Total Downforce Racing with Team Talent car, out early on in this event. He talked about the work he put in. Very disappointed coming home in P number 28. Young O for Ludicrous Speed really would have wanted a better day than that. He qualified mid-pack, but don't forget, he won the 2012 edition of this race, but he comes home today in P29. Satellite Racing's Chad Simpson rounds out your top 30, 174 laps down in the race. Then you have yourself Henry Bennett, 31st place, Andreas Eek in 32nd, and Tim Doyle. Andreas Eek, of course, were the victims of our first caution of the day. They come home in 32nd and 33rd. That's our results. That's probably the longest results run I've done in a very, very long time. We're going to talk to your top 3 drivers right about now. And of course, we're going to start with your winner, the second ever Scandinavian driver to win a 500-mile race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. In 2012, it was Young O. In 2020, it's Hugo Olsen for Powerslide Motorsports. Hugo, congratulations on your victory.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So, talk us through it. You've basically been at the front all day long. You've been in intense battles with your own teammates. You've been in battles with I5G and Team Talent. But the key factor for me today was that we had 2 very long green flag runs when your car and that of your teammates seemed to come alive. Were you expecting long green flag runs, and was that kind of your game plan?
Yeah, looking at last year, there was a lot of green flag running, so we tried to focus on having a good car in the end, and just track position was really important, so we tried to be up front, me and Adam.
Now, in terms of the last pit stop, and actually I want to talk about your pit stops a little bit, because having a look through the data, you're a little bit slower than some of the drivers around you. In terms of that kind of risk reward, the amount of aggression you're putting into the pit stops, were you deliberately trying to take a slightly more conservative approach compared to slamming on the brakes at the last second?
I think one time in pit road I missed my box, so I lost probably like 2 seconds reversing. And yeah, on pit entry I was a bit more cautious, just to be there at the end.
And then that last 30 laps, you had yourself, you had Adam Blocker, it was you, 1 and 2. Final pit stops done. Was there a game plan? Was it free-for-all fighting? Was there a cut-off point when you were told to stop fighting? Or was it just you 2 to the end?
Yeah, I was just going for it, trying to be up front at the right time, planning how to get through lap traffic and all that, and I made the right overtake at the right time, and Adam couldn't fight back from that.
Well, you've won the 500. What's the emotions, what the feelings, and what milk are you going to drink?
Yeah, I'm super happy about this. I never thought about that I would end up in winner's circle 1 month ago, or last week even. I have some milk in the fridge, so I might take some of that later.
Gonna have a drink. Congratulations there, Hugo Wilson, Powerslide Motorsports, number 39 machine. Your winner of the 2020 Open Wheels 500-mile race presented by Mitchell Transmissions. Let's go over to second place then. Let's have a chat with Adam Blocker. Adam, 30 laps to go. It was you and your teammate. There's no one else around you. 15 laps to go. You're right on Hugo's rear end. But then you started falling back. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was amazing to be in that position. You know, obviously, this position you want to be in. We pretty much, once Michele had issues, we pretty much just smoked everyone else, honestly. So, yeah, I know once Michele had issues, it was Hugo and I. The one stop, I kind of got boxed out by Wilson on pit in. I almost sped on pit in and kind of slid my box. So I was 3 seconds back from Hugo. And I sort of ran him down with some help of some lap traffic, and yeah, we were pretty even going to the last stops and swapped the lead a couple times, but ultimately it just came down to who got timing with lap traffic, and I almost had it. One time I got some lap traffic help from Crane, but Hugo had a chance to get back past me, and then I was working on him. If I had had a couple more laps without him getting a tow from a lap car, I think I could have gotten back past him. But unfortunately for me, that didn't happen. Yeah, either way, I mean, still a 1-2 for the team. So,
talking about pit stops, talking about traffic management as well. It seemed to me second half of the run, traffic management was very hard with the warm tyres. Was there the thought coming down to that last pit stop, or maybe coming in, trying to do the undercut? Was it even worth trying to think about doing the undercut, knowing the way the draft works here? And also, how hard was it getting past lap traffic in the second, kind of third of a run?
Well, in terms of undercut, we could have stopped maybe 2 laps earlier, but that was about it because I think we stopped with 28 to go. I pitted the same lap as Hugo. I knew I would have a little bit shorter fill, so I just wanted to keep all the variables the same. But yeah, I was pretty much just going to follow whatever he did. But yeah, I mean, I could have stopped maybe a couple laps earlier. I don't think it would have made a difference. I mean, tires were a huge deal too, so you didn't want to pit too early and then have a guy come out with you on fresher tires. That was a death sentence. But yeah, and then lap traffic. I mean, unless it was some of the really slow guys that were struggling. I mean, the guys in the midfield, they were quick enough to where if they didn't give you help, it was so hard. Like, yeah, there was a few times where, like, one car gets by. I know when Hugo got by, and then Michele and I were struggling because it was just so hard, especially later in the race with the hot track and the tires just shot. I mean, even following just Hugo at the end of the race, just trying to push to get past him, I burned off my tires by 5 to go, just trying all I could. About hit the wall like 10 times. So.
And I had another question, and it's kind of alluded. Oh yeah, we're 6 months, 6 months and a week away from the next big Indianapolis 500-mile race, which is going to be, of course, the iRacing Indy 500. We were here 6 months ago talking to you. The victory's kind of eluded you once again. What do you need to have happen in 6 months' time to have luck come on your side?
Well, unfortunately / fortunately, I don't think I'll be racing the official iRacing Indy 500 anytime soon because I'll be working the real-life Indy 500. So yeah, the Open Wheels 500 is kind of the chance I get every year now. Yeah, come close a lot of times now. It's 2018 is in top 4 on the last lap shootout and got in a wreck. P2 to Treno in 2019, and then obviously this. Yeah, I mean, all you can do is put yourself in position in these races. Like, all you can do is be up front and have a chance. And yeah, that's what we did. We had an excellent setup, and yeah, I just want to really thank everybody on Powerslide for helping with that. A lot of people put effort into that. Me, Hugo, Henry, Andrew, Chris, even people like Brian, Laura, and I'm gonna forget somebody, but yeah, even people like Arjuna, even people that weren't running the race that helped with setup or different things. So yeah, a lot went into it, and yeah, it's just really cool to be part of that team and finally get a broadcast Indy 500 win for Powerslide. At least Hugo did, so that's awesome.
Well, thank you very much there. Adam Blocker coming home in second place here today in the number 74 Powerslide Motorsports car. And again, that victory just eluding him. I still think that, we give him a rig somewhere in Gasoline Alley in May next year. He'll get a crowd. There'll be lots of sponsors there. It will be fine. He can run it from Gasoline Alley. No one needs to know. Third place in this race here today is the first of the i5G cars coming home. I can't do it at the beginning because my wife will probably kill me, but I'll try to do it at the end. Matt Pavelski, third place. Well done.
Thanks, Will.
So talk us through the race, because but a long part of it, it seemed to be that you and the i5G cars had a good advantage when you were running together. But then, of course, you had Christopher Demeritte, who was out the picture early on. We won't talk about that one. And then, of course, then your teammate, Michele Constantini, had the moment on pit road, which kind of left you running by yourself. Did that impact on your ability to really fight in the last 50 laps?
I wouldn't say it impacted my ability personally to fight. I mean, Chris and Michele and Adam and Hugo were they pulled out to these huge gaps on those green flag runs. So I would say, as a team, of course, it affected our ability to fight because Chris and Michele were, our 2 fastest drivers today. But that's just how it goes, I guess.
And in terms of the race itself, we've talked a lot about traffic with other people we've interviewed already from Powerslide. But I want to ask you about 2 things: traffic and track temperature, because it seemed to be the 2 together made the first half of the run rather easy, the second half of the run rather difficult.
Yeah, the race started out in pretty cool temperatures. I think we started at right around 104 And as the race went on, I mean, it progressively got hotter, and we didn't think it would get up to 130, and it might have hit that a couple times. But the hotter the track got, the better we felt about our car. But the flip side of that is, the longer you run on that hot track, the more you're going to get spread out, and any little mistake in traffic, whatever, that's kind of the end of your ability to kind of fight unless you can pack back up. But we thought we planned for it to an extent we had, but it's such a tough, fickle beast to kind of work against.
We've had 2 races now with the IR18 with the Aero Shield. And in terms of the way the Aero Shield, I mean, we talked about it quite a bit in the broadcast. Has the Aero Shield kind of changed the nature of racing at these 500-mile races at Indianapolis? And do you think it's been better for worse? Is it a positive change or just something just different that you have to adapt to?
I think it's just different that you have to adapt to, because I mean we had the AFP for I don't know how long before the Aero screen, and really the biggest adjustment is you have that big pillar that comes up the center of your screen.
Yeah.
So starts and restarts are kind of a little bit iffy. You kind of got to stagger one way or the other and look out one side of your monitor. But that's really about the only change. I mean, they might have changed a little bit in terms of their dynamics in Aero, but it's something that we can work around pretty easily.
And final question. I say we're basically 6 months removed from your team making history. Brandon Trainer, the first 2-time winner of the iRacing Indianapolis 500 back in May. Of course, we are 6 months and a week removed from doing it all over again in the 2021 iRacing Indianapolis 500. What has your team learned from today that will help you in terms of kind of keeping that dominant run in May that you've had for so many years now?
I think it just told us that we got to work harder. We kind of rolled up with something very similar to what we had in May, and from what it sounded like, I mean, Adam and Powerslide and Hugo, they put in a lot of work into their car. They worked for it and they earned it. And so for us, it's just kind of a motivating factor where it's like, we've done so well for all these months, for all these races, and now we kind of gotta reclaim our crown, excuse me. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much, sir. My wife has been warned already. From I5G Broken Arrow Apex Racing Team, the one, the only, Matt Herbo D. I can't do it that well, I'm sorry. Not like the olden days. I'll try in May.
See you then.
Thank you very much. And, well, quick thoughts before we go over to our final interview of the day. Aaron, it was a race that I felt was really entertaining, because we had the entertaining start, the flip-flopping of positions, the drafting, but then it turned into one of those races that you and I grew up on, when it wasn't just about you battling it out and changing positions every 2 corners. It became a race where you had to really attack the racetrack, where you really had to fight every lap, every corner, to not only hold momentum, but to look after the car that has been given to you.
Yeah, I think, if anything, this race had almost every element of every iteration of IndyCar that we've had on the iRacing service. It felt like an IR05 race, it felt like a DW12 race, and we had the IR18 race. So it had all 3 phases, but the thing that's going to stay with me from this 500-mile race is the what could have beens. So many unforced errors, so many putting your car in bad spots, that they say to win the 500 miles at Indianapolis, you have to be perfect. You can't have a single mistake, a single error, and that's why we got the podium that we did. But for several drivers, they're going to be looking at this, or not wanting to look at this, rather, on what could have been. But already now, these teams are going to be looking 6 months ahead, and the planning for May will probably begin shortly after we're off the air.
Well, Aaron, one thing that will be different come the month of May is expected changes to the IR18. It's been a long while on the older damage model and the older tire model, but this might be the last race on this package, as it were. Next time out, expecting a new damage model and a new tire model, Will. And that's going to shake things up and mean all of these teams are heading back to the drawing board in just a few weeks' time.
And that's exactly what we love as well. I think that, a bit like in other forms of motorsport, the longer you go through, the closer the gaps get. But actually, in some cases, it means that it becomes less about the driver and, dare I say, a little bit more about the setup, so on and so forth. Arjuna, in terms of the moments of the race, I can really break it down to 3 key things. Number 1, the restart after that third caution. The incident with Marco Brazil, of course, with Christopher Demerit down into turn number 2. The second thing, of course, has got to be that pit stop by Michele Constantini, diving it down. And again, if the lap down car was half a metre to the left, which technically he shouldn't have been anyway, then we would have talked about this being in the iRacing top 10. One of the great moments of the race. And then also, I think my third highlight of the race has got to be the longevity of that final run. The fact that it went on for so long, and the fact that, yes, we had 1 or 2 drivers graze the wall, but the fact that we went so long on that final run really did test the drivers.
Yeah, and it wasn't determined by strategy or a late race caution, meaning a crazy restart. Olsen and Blocker, they played it perfectly. Aaron mentioned it as well. Things have to go so perfectly here. Everything went right for both of those drivers. And well, for a team like Powerslide to show up like this, put 2 cars out there in front and dominating much of the race, well, 15 seconds was the gap between second and third. It cannot be understated just how impressive those runs were for both the 39 and the 74.
Yeah, I'm doing the maths right now. The last green flag run went for 117 laps. Incredible there. So basically 4 full fuel runs to end out the race here. And with that, we get the chance to talk to Mr. Tanner Watkins, who, of course, been working behind the scenes, not just today, all the way through qualifying, all the way through sign-ups, all the way to make sure that this 2020 edition of the Open Wheels 500, presented by Mitchell Transmissions, has gotten off the ground and to a conclusion. Tanner, you can take a deep breath now.
Yeah, this is the time when we can finally do just that. It's a long 2 weeks, and we're happy to do it. And what a month of November it was. This is our second edition of the Open Wheels 500, and today had a little bit of stuff to clean up in the first half of the race, but like you guys mentioned, we had a fantastic green flag run to the finish. As the promoter and I guess in effect the race director, really to get the green flag run to the end, that's what I want. I want this race to play out naturally. I don't think it's necessarily fair when you get those final couple lap sprints to the finish, and I'm not just saying that because of what happened last May. We won't talk about that part, but it allows the race to play out naturally, and we saw the drama and the storylines unfold just in a plain sense. Guys coming in and having to deal with this racetrack, evolving temperatures. They went up and down all day between 120, 128 degrees Fahrenheit on the track. That was challenging. The field was really strewn out, and while there were some lap cars that the guys had to deal with, all those guys, for the most part, were on their lead lap. They still deserved to fight for that position just in case one of those yellows came out. So really, I'm pleased with the way the race played out. Unfortunate for our winner last year, Michele Costantini, as you guys mentioned. That was a huge moment in the race, and that turned a 3-horse battle into just a pairing of Powerslide teammates racing it out to the end. Michele, even had he missed Oliver Silva on the pit entry there and avoided a avoidable contact penalty, he was still going over 100 miles an hour when he hit the pit commitment line. And he did get a pit lane speeding penalty on top of the avoidable contact. So since we didn't get another yellow from that point on, his race was effectively ended with the yellow, or the speeding penalty. But great job by Hugo Olsen. Got to give props to Arjuna on our pre-race show today. He did pick the Powerslide driver to win the race today, and he was steady all month long. You go back to opening day on Sunday, November 1st. Everybody was very excited, and you're very high at that moment, running through qualifications week, a couple of practices, heading into the 2 days of qualifications, and then race week. You know, Power Slide guys, they were here in our race week practices and saw the elevated track temperatures coming when a lot of drivers from various teams were not taking part of those practices. We had good participation in yesterday's final practice, but some of that, I think the preparation really paid out today, and a deserved winner took the crown and the milk at the end.
I'm going to ask you a serious question here, because I remember about 4 or 5 months ago, this race wasn't happening. And you kind of got roped in the same way that I used to do about 6-7 years ago into bringing it back for 2020. What made you commit to bring this event back for 2020, and how satisfying is it to have had the product that you've seen placed before you?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was a period where we didn't think the race would happen. We announced the 2020 event back in March, and all the way up to the end of June, things were heading along as planned. But I had some changes in my professional life, and I wasn't sure if that was going to allow me to continue and plan the race the way that really my expectations required. And thankfully, things opened up, and we again got support from our sponsors, Mitchell Transmissions, Pit Lane Parlay, the Majors Series, Majors Garage, that really helped us cover our expenses for this year's event. And RaceSpot, I'd like to mention, has been an awesome broadcast partner. Also did a great job in working with us and making sure that not only did we have an event that was covered in the same scale as last year, but even expanded on. We had tremendous coverage of, the qualifications draw on Thursday of qualifying week, final hour coverage of both pole day and bump day. We had coverage of Veterans 100 qualifications, and then the Veterans 100 and the pit stop competition yesterday. I mean, it was fantastic. I really feel that this event took a step forward in 2020, and in a year with so much uncertainty and so many challenges, I think that's a real accomplishment. And then you talk about the quality of driving that we saw today. For anybody that listened along to yesterday's drivers meeting, I'm hard on these guys, and I expect a lot out of them. I've raced with pretty much everybody out here on the track today. I know how they race, and I know how talented they are. But at the same time, I know how things can go sideways from time to time. So I asked a lot of them yesterday, and I told them this is likely the most talented 500 that we've ever seen here on iRacing, and I think they provided. It was great again to see a green flag finish to the end. That was one thing that we wish we would have had last year, and we got that this year. And everything played out naturally, where we had Hugo Olsen standing as a deserving winner at the very end.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Tanner. Thank you for all the work that you've done over not only the last couple of weeks, but also the last, couple of months in order to make this a success. We hope that things might come back in 2021.
Yeah, no, thanks guys again for all your work and your help. We're expecting to be back in 21, so if that's the case, we'll be re-announcing things again, probably in the springtime, just like we did this past year. It's been awesome to see the support this community really puts out for this event. I don't make a dime on putting this on and spend a lot of time doing it, but when I get all the kudos from people in the community and folks that are there every day putting in the practice laps, showing up and racing hard all day in this sort of molten hot conditions with the track temp, it really makes it worth it to hear that it's a tough race and it's one that they all appreciate and enjoy. So I'm looking forward to 21, looking forward to having you guys back on the call again, and thanks for all your work. It's really a pleasure.
Thanks, Tanner. Hopefully, if travel permits, maybe even get the chance to see you in May next year. Tanner Watkins, ladies and gentlemen, who has been the force behind the 2020 Open Wheels 500-mile race presented by Mitchell Transmissions. And with that, it is time to wrap things up. We've got to say thank you, first of all, to a number of people, as ever. On production, Arjuna Kankapati, of course, my co-commentators, Aaron Likens and Arjuna as well. It's one out, TrackCam22.com for track cameras, and Tyler Maxson for the in-car cameras you've seen here today. Our race coverage today has been presented by the Majors Garage. Motorway Skippies is on the air tomorrow night at 9 p.m. GMT. Don't forget, you can follow us for more sim racing action on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Twitch TV at RaceSpotTV. But, well, what a day it's been. Hugo Olsen becomes the second ever Scandinavian to win a 500-mile race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and he etches his name along the list of so many who has come before. We had a 117-lap green flag run to the end, and what a race it's been. From all of us here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we say thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.